I'm your one-stop sports shop, and on mixlr.com/wakeupcall DT. I hope you're all having yourselves a great morning this morning, and a very proud welcome to the Cafe Kubal studios as we're here with you inside because it's nasty outside. It's supposed to be raining all week long in Syracuse, New York, and it's been very, very warm. Very warm. So one of those, and I lived down in Florida for a bit, and everybody that knows the show, you know that Florida is our second home of Wake Up Call. And when I was down in Florida, it just, it would rain and then it would get hotter. It's doing that up north right now. It's doing that this week. Yesterday, they said it was 76, but it was muggy. It was sticky. It was just kind of like stale air. It was not fun by any stretch of the imagination. So if you're going out, go support a local business. And, probably don't mow your lawn today. I'm not even thinking about it. So stay safe and stay well. And I'm happy that it's warm. I'm happy that we have that. But the rainy, sticky, dry, I'm not a fan of it at all. So good morning to everybody out there. Hopefully you're in an air-conditioned home or business and enjoying your life, or studio and enjoying your day today. So inside the Cafe Kubal Studios, 3501 James Street, 324 West Water Street, 208 North Townsend Street, as well as 401 South Salina Street, as well where you'll find them in Syracuse. You'll also find them inside of Golisano's Children's Hospital in downtown Syracuse, and we thank Golisano for all that they do for our community and our kids, and God bless, and hopeful that there will be miracles that will be answered today, I hope, so by the grace of God. As well as I want to let everybody know out on 343 Fayette Street in Manlius, New York, and of course their newest location where we started off the week with a live show on site was at the corner of Route 11 and Taft Road in North Syracuse, Cafe Kubal's first ever drive-through. And of course they have indoor seating as well, and you can find them right there at the Sweetheart Corner. So with that being said, awesome show coming up for you today. Two incredible guests. MonPazPopcorn.com's What's Poppin', bringing you Dave Pasiak in hour one and Joe Forgione in hour number two. Dave coming to us from the NVU Linden Hornets Division III basketball coach. He's a longtime coach, analyst, and lover of the game. He is one of the best minds when it comes to basketball and sports in general, and I appreciate that we've had him on all throughout the NBA playoffs. And he has been a weekly piece of Wake Up Call, which has been very much appreciated on my side, and I'm very happy to have him here. So Dave will join us in a second. And in hour number two, my partner from my collegiate days, the first show I ever started, MU Courtside, I brought on this gentleman, Joe Forgione, and he will be rejoining me today to speak on the Home Run Derby, as well as his Falcons, my Jaguars, and of course, comedy will always ensue. We'll have some rapid fire, and we'll have a good time with Joe. One of the best people that I've met in the business, and I would venture to say my best co-host that I've ever had as a partner. So he'll be on the show in just a little bit to bring it as we always have brought it before. So Dave and Joe today, very excited to have them both. And for those of you saying, Dan, it's Wednesday. Hour number two has to be fantasy football. Well, Mike Sofka had to switch schedules this week. He'll be with us tomorrow. Proudly brought to you by the Wildcat Sports Pub from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. So if you're looking for your fantasy fix, you will get it tomorrow right here on wakeupcalldt.com, mixlr.com, as well as youtube.com/wakeupcalldt, and on facebook.com/wakeupcalldt and facebook.com/livenowdt. So with all that being said, Dave is here with us, and I'm very happy to have him on the show as always to continue the conversation about the NBA as we are in the finals. Let's bring the man in. Dave, how are we doing today?
Doing great, Dan. How you doing?
I'm doing well. And Dave, we've seen, it's kind of interesting because the NBA finals, the NBA playoffs all the way up until the finals kind of felt like it sped through. And with a lot of teams winning in 6 or winning, in 5 or winning throughout, looking at this, teams that won 4-0, 4-1, or 4-2 in their series, it really sped it up. For the NBA finals, it's spaced out and gapped, which gives us some more time to enjoy it, essentially. And we're looking at it right now. Phoenix leading the series 2-1, so we're only going into Game 4, and there's a break in between of a couple days each time. So after tonight's game here on July 14th, there's a break until Saturday. What's your take on this? Phoenix gets their first one at home, drops the next one at home, but then they go to Milwaukee and steal one from Milwaukee, and now here we are in Milwaukee again. What's your take on the series so far, 3 games in?
Actually, other way around. The Suns won both at home, and then
Oh yeah, did I? Yeah, okay. Yeah, no, I did. I started 2-0, and Milwaukee won. That's my mistake. Yeah, so Milwaukee took care of home court. Phoenix won the first 2. My apologies on that. I'm staring at this, and it kind of threw me off. I was looking at something in the schedule. So Phoenix 2-0, Milwaukee gets another one, or gets their first one at home. They have a chance to tie it at home. You talked about the fact that Phoenix was up 2-0 the last time we spoke on the show, and you said, okay, but all they did was take care of home court. Now seeing Milwaukee taking care of it the first time, what's your thought? Are you anticipating both teams take care of home and Milwaukee ties this thing up, or how do you take it?
Well, I mean, that would be my lean. I think, tonight's game is really pivotal in terms of the series. I think if Phoenix can win one on the road and go up 3-1, they're really in command as far as winning the series. If Milwaukee holds serve and gets it back 2-2, then anybody's ball game. I mean, Phoenix still would have home court, but Milwaukee's got a lot of momentum riding with them, and I think you spoke about it is spaced out a little bit more than the earlier rounds, but the other thing is it feels more spaced out because we don't have multiple games going where you got like an Eastern Conference game one day and a Western Conference game the next. So I think Budenholzer gets a lot of it seems to get an undue amount of criticism and whatnot for lack of adjustment, I guess. But I thought that Milwaukee really, he put some of that to rest last game because I thought the Bucks really adjusted well. He went smaller a little bit more, got great minutes out of Portis and Connaughton off the bench. They didn't play Lopez nearly as much as they had earlier on. And the other thing, we talked about before that Milwaukee needed a little better play out of Middleton and especially Holiday, and they got it the other night. And conversely, Booker had, one of his worst games of the playoffs so far. So it'd be interesting. I think it would really be a fantastic game if the stars on both teams are all clicking on the same night. But, the other thing is that really doesn't get enough talk. The Suns or the Bucks rather would be 3-0 if you only counted the minutes Giannis was on the floor. Like they've been plus in all 3 games in his minutes. And the difference in game 3 was, like I said, Connaughton, Portis, and a little bit Jeff Teague. They got some play off the bench that they hadn't been getting in the first 2 games in Phoenix.
Yeah, and seeing how Milwaukee was able to do this, and like you said, kind of speaking on it, and Milwaukee came back. This is the thing, Phoenix has been able to handle themselves in this postseason pretty well, and started out with 8 wins and 2 losses in their first 2 series, and now we look at it and see the fact they won the first game by 13, they won the next game by 10, and then the Bucks come back and win it by 20. What are your thoughts on kind of the margin of victory where a team could lose by double digits and then turn around and win by 20? How much do you give to the fans? How much do you give to being on home court and comfortable area? Being a basketball coach as long as you have, it's not like, okay, this team lost 2 games and then they win the next one by 1 or 2 points. Can kind of show, that Milwaukee's fighting back. Milwaukee comes back and they handle them 120 to 100. How do you assess the point totals that we're seeing in this?
Well, basketball, men's basketball in particular, and the NBA especially, the margin between, you've got the Eastern Conference champion and the Western Conference champion, and the margin between the best team and the worst team in the NBA is not all that great. And, when you get the 2 best teams in the NBA, the margin is razor thin. So, from game to game, you can look back early in this playoffs. Brooklyn blasted Milwaukee in game 2, and then the Bucks came back and won 4 in a row. So, I think reading too much into point spread from game to game, I think is a dangerous thing. I think it's more about the adjustments. And the other thing, when you spoke about home court, the Stars are going to play well most nights. The complementary players, the role players, and the bench players, tend to play better when they're playing at home. Just, crowd behind them, greater comfort level, a little less pressure, those types of things. So I think that has certainly played itself out in this series, which is no surprise. We talked earlier too about Phoenix has had great bench play and has been the deeper team pretty much every round of the playoffs. But the injury to Saric is pretty significant for Phoenix because it disrupts their rotation and kind of negates some of that depth advantage that they've had in the earlier in this series and earlier in the playoffs. So that has kind of, with Sarge being out, that has kind of evened that whole bench situation out. They're still getting decent play out of Johnson and Payne, but certainly Payne in particular was not as good in Milwaukee as he was at home. So health is going to, hopefully health doesn't decide it. Hope that the key players on both sides remain healthy and nobody gets dinged up the rest of the way, because that, we don't want to see that be the deciding factor in the series. But it very well could be if one of the stars on either side would happen to get dinged up and miss a game or two.
Yeah, and that's the thing is keeping everybody healthy. We talked about that before, making sure that players are out there doing what they need to do. Giannis came out in this game 3, 41 points in 38 minutes, 14 of 23. He missed the 2 threes that he attempted. He was 13 of 17 from the charity stripe. So, good numbers at the line, 13 of 17. He struggled there before. He struggled there a couple years ago against the Raptors in their series en route to the Raptors winning the NBA Finals. And he had 13 rebounds in the game, 6 assists, a steal, and only 1 turnover and 3 fouls in the game. So, fantastic stat line for Giannis in Game 3, 41 and 38. His numbers across the board, like I said, and another double-double with 13 rebounds. And having 6 assists in this matchup, he was one of 4 players on the Bucks in Game 3 that had at least 4 assists in the game. Pat Connaughton had 4, Holiday had 9, Middleton had 6, and Giannis had 6 as well. So what can you say to the stat line of Giannis and what he did? Does he look back to normal to you? I know we talked about his injury and the thought that he was going to be done for the entire NBA playoffs, and then he comes back and you said, he didn't have a Giannis day, but his numbers still looked good. And then here he is with this stat line, 41 in 38 minutes with 13, as well as 6 assists to go along with this, 1 turnover, and minimized his fouls as well. Is Giannis back to Giannis in your opinion, or are you still seeing some places where he doesn't look the same due to the injury that he had?
Well, I don't think he's 100% back to, full-blown Giannis. I think he's still kind of picking his spots a little bit as far as really aggressively attacking, but every game has been a little bit better and a little bit closer to full strength, and you can kind of see that as they go. But also every game there's been at least 1 or 2 instances where he's gone down hard and tweaked it and come up a little bit, just a tiny bit gimpy. So he's clearly not 100% physically, but he's made some adjustments to his game, and he's still by far the best player in the series, and he's a top 3 or 4 player in the world. So when he's on the floor, it substantially tips the balance in the game. You brought up a good point about the, cited the number of assists the Bucks had the other day. Their ball movement was night and day better than it had been in the 2 games in Phoenix. And I think that's one of the things that, obviously that was a point that they stressed and kind of an emphasis or an adjustment that that the team and the coaching staff made between games 2 and 3. I think that if they can sustain that, they'll continue to get quality looks all the way around by sharing the ball. So I think that was a very significant factor in the game the other night.
That coming here from Dave Pasiak on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora, longtime coach and analyst, and of course fan of the game, joining us here all throughout the NBA playoffs and hanging out here this morning inside the Cafe Kubal studios as always. Dave, to look at the rest of the team, who has impressed you the most at this point, 3 games into the NBA Finals for the Bucks, besides Giannis? Who's the guy that's really stepped out to you? And besides Giannis's play, who's been is it Middleton, or are you seeing somebody else? And then conversely, who's the player that you feel like they're not getting enough out of?
Well, on the Bucks side, Middleton all through the playoffs, when the Bucks have kind of had their backs to the wall, he's really responded in individual games or over the course of a series. You remember back to when they were down against New Jersey, he came up with a big game when they had to have it. He was good and got them off to a good start the other night. Middleton in that sense has delivered when the chips have been down, so to speak, for Milwaukee. And then the guys that really were the catalyst the other night, I thought, were Portis and Connaughton with their play, which hadn't been there the first couple of games. On the flip side of that, and I think it's not as much due to poor play as it not being a great matchup for Milwaukee, is they're not getting out of Lopez what they have during the season and earlier in the playoffs. I think that's that's not a function of Lopez necessarily playing badly, as it is a function of they match up better with smaller lineup in terms of guarding the screen and roll and having a little bit more defensive versatility. So, just because of the reduced minutes, Lopez isn't producing as much. The flip side of not playing Lopez as much is Milwaukee's better defensively in handling screen and roll and those type of situations, but it's allowed Ayton to be more of a presence around the basket. Ayton, I think, is much more effective when when Lopez is not in the game versus trying to score and be a factor while Lopez is guarding.
Yeah, and so, I'm happy you brought up Lopez, because he was kind of a thorn in the side of some teams in the playoffs in the past, but, just more quiet right now. He had 11 points in this game, 21 minutes, had a couple rebounds, 1 block in the game. What's your PJ Tucker assessment? Part of the starting 5 of the Bucks, somebody who has been around the block and seen different teams and different opportunities. He had 7 points in 30 minutes in this game and has been in the league for a bit, was drafted in round 2, pick 35 overall by the Toronto Raptors back in 2006, and PJ Tucker was a Raptor for a little bit. Spent some time with Toronto, then went off to Phoenix, ironically, went back to Toronto, and then went to Houston and ended up in Milwaukee after spending part of the season in Houston this year. What has been your assessment of PJ Tucker in the playoffs and in this series?
Well, in the playoffs, like in the last round in particular, he was the guy that drew Durant much of the time, and really, although Durant had some huge games, I think Tucker at times played him as well as anybody as far as, making him really work to get to his spots. And, Durant's got such length that, he can shoot over most anybody that's going to guard him, but I think Tucker made his life difficult at times in the playoffs and was a significant, had a significant impact on the series in that respect. In this round, with Phoenix being so guard dominant with Booker and Paul and everything, Tucker's impact, I think, on that end of the floor is not as significant. And on the offensive end, Tucker is they basically call on him to space and knock down open threes and open shots. And he's done that when it's called upon, but he's not getting a ton of a ton of looks at the basket in this series. So, I think he always provides them with a level of stability and veteran leadership and everything. So, and I think he's still doing that. But in terms of his significance on the outcome of the series, I think just because he's not being called on to do as much, he's not as impactful as he was in the last round where he's the primary defender on Durant most of the time.
Yeah, so that coming here from Dave Pasiak this morning, taking a look at the Bucks, and we will take a look at the Suns a little bit more on the other side of this fast break on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora, where sports truly meets that thing called life. We appreciate you being here every Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. Eastern Time on youtube.com/wakeupcalldt, facebook.com in two areas, facebook.com/livenowdt, and facebook.com/wakeupcalldt, and of course listening on mixlr.com/wakeupcalldt and on wakeupcalldt.com's homepage. So with that being said, we'll take a step aside inside of the Cafe Kubal studios when we come back with our longtime basketball coach, analyst, and fan, Dave Pasiak, telling us about the Phoenix Suns and his take as we step forward into Game 4 and beyond here with the 2021 NBA Finals. More coming up right after this, where sports meets life on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora.
Carvel DeWitt, it's what happy tastes like. Do you know why? Because we make ice cream. Creamy, rich, flavorful ice cream. Not yogurt or iced milk like some of our competitors. Ice cream. Fresh, by hand, daily. For the calorie conscious, we have something new for you. Our new Carvelite. Same great flavor, creaminess, and texture of our regular ice cream with only 35 calories an ounce. So whether you want an ice cream cake, flying saucer, dasher, carvalanche, hard or soft ice cream, we will satisfy your craving with our fresh, handmade regular or new Carvelite ice cream. Carvel DeWitt. It's what happy tastes like.
Cafe Kubal offers same-day local delivery of our products, offering no delivery charge for Onondaga County. Shop cafecubal.com for fresh roasted coffee beans, cold brew, travel mugs, and all your essential Cafe Kubal needs. Cafe Kubal, coffee for the soul.
The Wildcat Sports Pub in Camillus, New York is located on 3680 Milton Avenue in the Home Depot Plaza. It is your family-friendly sports bar and restaurant. Folks, some sports bars aren't family-friendly. Some family-friendly restaurants are not sports bars. The Wildcat Sports Pub in Camillus, New York is proud to be both. It is that marriage that you've been looking for years. The Wildcat Sports Pub is your home base for your sports bar and restaurant needs, games for the kids, indoor and outdoor activities, and enough things on the menu to come back every single week and get to try something new. They're open Sundays from noon to 8 p.m., Monday through Wednesday, 11 a.m. to 11 p.m., and Thursday through Saturday from 11 a.m. to midnight. For reservations and party information, call 315-487-2222 for the Wildcat family-friendly sports pub and restaurant. Welcome back here to Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora on wakeupcalldt.com, your one-stop sports shop, and on mixlr.com/wakeupcalldt. And for those of you watching and listening around the world on Facebook and YouTube, facebook.com/wakeupcalldt and facebook.com/livenowdt, as well as youtube.com/wakeupcalldt. Here inside of the Cafe Kubal studios, locations on 3501 James Street, 324 West Water Street, 208 North Townsend Street, 401 South Salina Street, 343 Fayette Street in Manlius, as well as downtown Syracuse inside of Golisano's Children's Hospital, and their newest location, which has a drive-through for the first time ever for Cafe Kubal, and that being located on Sweetheart Corners, corner of Route 11 and Taft Road in North Syracuse. Dave Pasiak, our guest for hour number one, talking about the 2021 NBA Finals. And let's get back into the discussion with Mr. Pasiak as we flip to the side of the Phoenix Suns. We were speaking off the air, and Dave brought up a great point about the fact that Phoenix has never really had their back up against the wall in the NBA playoffs. And I talked about the fact how they had really no issue against the Lakers and then were able to sweep the Nuggets after that. So Phoenix doesn't know what it's like to be pushed up against the wall and have to come off that wall as much as some of the other teams, that have been through here, and definitely Milwaukee, who was battle-tested. So what are your thoughts, Dave, on that? You brought up the point in the break, so I'd love for you to carry that point out a little bit more here on the air.
Yeah, I mean, other than dropping the early game to the Lakers, the Suns really have been out in front the whole playoffs in every series, and I've never really had to fight from underneath. So if Milwaukee is able to even this thing, it'll be the first time in the playoffs where the Suns have maybe will be feeling a little bit of pressure. And how they respond as a young, they're generally a young team. Guys like Ayton and Booker and Bridges and whatnot. But then you got the Chris Paul factor where, the narrative all along is, this is Chris Paul's time. He's going to, finally going to get his championship ring in the NBA Finals for the first time. How does Chris Paul respond? If the Suns are in a pressure situation, must-win situation, and they're pushed a little bit. Will he elevate his game to peak level, or will he tighten up a little bit? Because he may, Chris Paul's at the point in his career where he may not get another opportunity. And this may be as close as he gets to a championship. So, how he responds will be very interesting to watch if the Suns get pushed. Now, if the Suns win tonight and go up 3-1, they're going to kind of play with the lead for the rest of the playoffs, and Milwaukee will be fighting from underneath the whole way, even if it gets to a game 7. So, interesting to see how that plays out in terms of the Suns. If the Bucks can put them in a situation where the pressure's now on them, how Phoenix responds will be fascinating.
Yeah, and that, like you said, Phoenix has not been in that position, so we don't know how they would react to such a response. But that very well could happen tonight. Now, this is a very integral part of the series, and the game 4s, because of the situation we're at right now with Phoenix up 2-1. This is where the world gets completely different. It's crazy, but it's one of the things in sports where whoever wins tonight, it drastically changes the series for one way or another. It either evens it out and puts everybody at 500 and gives the Bucks some momentum at 2-2 for the series, or, like you said, it puts the Bucks on their heels for the rest of the series with Phoenix up 3-1. What are your thoughts on? When we get to a game 4 and it's like this, where the difference is 75% of it's won by a team or it's split. This is a huge moment in the series, and I love this game, like where we are right now, because we're either snake eyes at 2-2 or where Phoenix has got to do one more and they got 3 chances to do it. So this is really where the series shifts in one way or another in such a drastic way. And I love that when we watch, the NBA playoffs and whatnot, that we have these games where the teams are either going to tie it up and it's going to be, a free-for-all as we move forward, or, in this case, the Phoenix Suns are going to be playing in such a way where they have Milwaukee up against the wall for the next 3.
Yeah, I think you hit it right on the head. The game 4 is so pivotal in terms of the direction of the series, and I think the other thing that makes it interesting, more interesting than normal, is the extra day off. Like usually when you when you go on the road for the games 3 and 4, it's play, day off, play. But I'm suspecting that the NBA pushed to today because of the baseball All-Star game last night and the TV situation. But, in past years, they would have played Sunday, Tuesday, playing Sunday, Wednesday, with that extra day of rest which is good for an older guy like Paul or a guy that's a little dinged up like Giannis. And also it gives both teams like an extra day to really dig in and prepare and adjust. And the fascinating thing in any 7-game series is to watch how the teams react and adjust from game to game. When you're focused in on one opponent like that, it's fundamentally different from the regular season where teams just don't have the time frame or the opportunity to make tweaks from game to game to the level and to the degree of detail that they do in the playoffs. So, the whole tone of the series it hangs in the balance with what happens tonight. And I think if the Bucks can square it, Phoenix still would have home court, but you'd have to like Milwaukee's chances with momentum kind of moving in their direction. But if Phoenix is able to win tonight, then it's going to be a very, very, very tall order for the Bucks to win 3 in a row.
Yeah, and I want to get to something, speaking about, pivotal Game 4 and whatnot. The old NBA format, which just a few years ago, about 7 years ago, was changed again. Instead of the 2-2-1-1-1 format we see now, the home team gets the first, or the home court advantage goes to the team with a better record, gets the first 2 games, then the opposing team gets the next 2, and then it goes home court advantage to the top team in games 5 and 7, and then the other team gets game 6. We used to see the 2-3-2 format, where home court advantage to the top team went to the first 2 and the last 2 games of the series, but the 3 games in the middle went to the team that didn't have the better record, which created a competitive advantage because if that team had won any games on the road, or even if they didn't, it puts them in a great situation to get 3 at home. What are your thoughts, Dave, about the 2-3-2 versus the 2-2-1-1-1 format, and what does it do to the game now that it changed back about 7 years ago?
Yeah, I was never a huge fan of the 2-3-2 for basketball. I felt and feel like 2-3-2 reduces the home court advantage for the team that worked all season to earn that. You could theoretically, like you talked about, you could lose the series and play less games at home than you did on the road under that format, which doesn't seem quite fair if you're the team that earned home court advantage and best record in the league. And I think now like teams travel charter and they've built in extra days and whatnot. So, the original argument for the 2-3-2 had a lot to do with the teams and also kind of the periphery, the media and, the league and the sponsors and all that kind of thing, trying to reduce the west to east and east to west coast travel. The other reason I didn't like 2-3-2 is it's fundamentally different than how you played the whole rest of the playoffs. All of the earlier rounds are 2-2-1-1-1. So I was not a fan of that format, and I was happy to see that the league kind of changed back to 2-2-1-1-1 a few years back, and really think that is a more competitively fair format for the for the teams involved.
Yeah, I thought that, speaking here with Dave Pasiak on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora inside of the Cafe Kubal studios, I felt the same way, that the 2-3-2, it gave an advantage to the road team. It gave an advantage to the team that didn't have the better record. If they took game 1 or game 2 on the road, then they could play 3 at home and end the series in 5. And the thing is, a 2-3-2 means that 3 of those 5 games are played by the team that didn't have the better record, which I don't think is fair at all, that they get to be home longer, because how many series are going to go 6 or 7? They could be wrapped up in 5 or 6. And so, in that type of situation, you could have a team, in this case, like the Bucks, that if they take care of home court, then they go back to Phoenix up 3-2. They flip the series. So I feel like the 2-3-2 was set up to help the road team more than the home team, and it almost gave you a disadvantage to have the better record, because they're like, well, yeah, you get Game 6 and Game 7 in front of your fans, so in the deepest part of the series, you get to play in front of your fans if you're the better team record-wise. You get Game 6 and Game 7 instead of just Game 7, and so that'll help you out when, the pressure cooker's on. But if I'm the team with the better record, I would say I don't want to go to Game 6 or 7. So, yeah, I get to have them at home, but I don't want to get that far in the series and have to win those games. So I think that, I don't know, I think to me it was a very strange thing to put into effect, and I never understood it. And I know when we got to the NBA Finals and I was kind of looking at it and everything, it always threw me off that a team would have to deal with that type of format to get to the pinnacle of the season and have to play that way and almost be punished for being a better team. So I don't like it, and I don't think the argument that you got Game 6 and 7 at home was any good because you want to wrap it up before you get there. So I don't see anything that did. I know they said it reduced travel and whatever for the team that was on the road because of having to go back and forth in the 1-1-1. But at the same time, I would say, well, have a better record in that case. And I don't think you should do something in a series that's going to benefit the team that's supposed to be the second best record amongst it. And like I said, arguing that they get Game 6 and 7 really doesn't, to me, do much because you don't want it to have to get to that far into the fire to have to deal with the furnace in that case.
Yeah, you're exactly right. Like I said, the motivator was like under 2-3-2, you got at most 2 trips west, from one coast to the other. Under 2-2-1-1-1, you could have 4 in a 7-game series. So that really was their motivator. But I think, the trade-off and kind of the added advantage that it gives to the team with the lesser record. And now in today's day and age, these guys they're all flying coach and flying charter and on their own schedule and whatnot. So and with the extra days off in there for travel, I really think that it was a good move by the league to revert to 2-2-1-1-1 for the finals.
Yeah, and looking at these Suns who are in that place of having the higher seed, to break them down a little bit more here and take a look at them. I asked you the biggest catalyst, in your opinion, of these first 3 games of the NBA Finals for the Bucks, and then the player that's kind of underwhelmed you. Let's go to the Suns in that respect. Who has done it for you so far, and who has not? So who's that main catalyst for Phoenix that you really think is impressive and rising? And then on the other side of it, which one of these Suns is kind of setting a little bit too early?
Well, I think that, in games 1 and 2, Bridges really stepped up and kind of played a significant role. But again, he wasn't as good on the road the other night. Booker throughout the playoffs has emerged as I think people are starting to recognize him as an elite level talent. But he had probably his poorest game of the playoffs the other night. Chris Paul has been steady to very good. Ayton, I think, has overperformed in the playoffs. And like I said, in this series, I think he's benefited from a reduction in Lopez's minutes. As far as guys underperforming, I think you flip the script. Booker was not very good in Game 3, so I wouldn't expect that to continue. But he's a guy that you wouldn't have expected his game to slip to the degree it did in Game 3. So, just at this point, just kind of write that off as as an anomaly and expect him to be closer to himself as we go forward. The other guy who's kind of found his way into the rotation with Saric's injury is Frank Kaminsky, and he really hasn't delivered a whole lot for them. So he's a guy that I think are going to need to get more out of the rest of the series. In that as part of that second team, and kind of give them close to what they were getting out of Sarge before he got hurt.
Yeah, in seeing Phoenix be where they are right now, and in the Chris Paul factor that so many people have focused on, you mentioned the fact that Booker really had not the greatest night. And in Game 3 that they dropped by 20 to Milwaukee on the road, 10 points in 29 minutes, 3 of 14 from the field, 1 of 7 from three-point, 2 of 7 from inside the arc, and 3 of 5 at the charity stripe. He had 6 rebounds, 2 assists in the game, and only 1 turnover, so that was fine. But what was your assessment of Booker? Just an off night? Defense keyed in on him right? What happened, in your opinion, to Devin Booker in Game 3?
Well, I think as much as anything, like I said, at this point, I'll write it off to just one of those things that happens. Bad night at a bad time. Obviously he's a focal point of the defense's attention. He's going to be, because he's establishing himself as a elite level player. But we really haven't seen a game like that out of him in the playoffs so far. I mean, he's been consistently. And especially in the games where Paul hasn't been as good. I mean, Booker has been very, very good throughout most of the postseason here, and I would expect that he'll bounce back with a much better game tonight and play well the rest of the series. I would be surprised if if he continues to slump over multiple games.
Chris Paul numbers have gone down from Game 1 to Game 3. 32 points in Game 1, then 23, then 19. However, he shot at least 50% from the field in each of the 3 games. Has shot 50% in Game 2 in a win for Phoenix, 63.2% in Game 1 in a win for Phoenix, 57.1% in Game 3 in a loss for Phoenix on the road. He's had 8 assists or better in those 3 games, 8 in Game 2, 9 in Games 1 and 3. What is your assessment of Chris Paul?
Well, I mean, Chris Paul he's very ball dominant in the screen and roll, and how Milwaukee likes to play drop coverage in that, which kind of lends itself to Chris Paul's wheelhouse with that mid-range jump shot, which looking on, broad-based, that mid-range jumper it's a low-efficiency shot according to analytics, but Chris Paul converts it at such a rate that it becomes a high-efficiency shot. Yeah. So Milwaukee did some different things in defending him and defending Booker in the screen and roll, and like a guy like Crowder is a beneficiary of that. Crowder shot the ball very well the other night. If the Bucks are taking the ball out of Paul's hands or out of Booker's hands, guys like Crowder and Bridges are going to get their looks and get their opportunities, and then it becomes a matter of whether they can deliver. Like, I don't think the way Crowder shot it the other night is sustainable, but he's going to have to shoot it at a reasonably efficient level if Milwaukee really continues to focus on taking the ball out of Paul's hands.
There's a shot that, speaking here with Dave Pasiak, longtime basketball coach and analyst here on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora, hanging out with us throughout the NBA playoffs. Obviously, he is the current coach of the NVU Linden Hornets NCAA Division III men's basketball team. Just got his 300th career win as a collegiate coach, and he's here with us inside of the Cafe Kubal studios on Wake Up Call for a few more minutes. The corner 3 is my favorite shot. It's my favorite three-point shot. The corner 3, the most difficult 3 to make because you got to be dead on. We saw a few corner 3s from the Bucks. Nothing from the Suns were made in the corner 3 situation. They made all of their three-point attempts in Game 3 from the upper right and the upper left to the right and left of the top of the key. What is your assessment of the corner 3? Being a longtime coach, not a ton of them were made, but when they were made, they were only made by the Bucks. What can you say about the beauty of the corner three.
Well, in the NBA, you got to remember the three-point arc is not symmetrical all the way around. So the corner three is actually and now in college basketball, since college basketball has gone to the FIBA line, it's true in college basketball also, not to the same degree it is in the NBA, but the corner three is a shorter shot than a wing or top of the circle three, because the arc is not symmetrical all the way around. So, just in that sense, the corner three in Milwaukee, like we talked about PJ Tucker earlier, and that's basically PJ Tucker's job, is stand in the corner and make that corner three, on the offensive end of the floor. So, I think it's a valuable, especially with the difference in distance in the NBA and everything. I think it's an integral part of what a lot of teams are doing offensively, and people are looking to take advantage of that especially. For example, if a team traps a screen and roll, that the pass out of the trap and then the second pass out of that leads to a corner three, which ends up being a pretty efficient shot.
And speaking of some of the other shots taken here, you mentioned Chris Paul. He's the elbow king, and he made a few shots, obviously, around the charity stripe. He made one on the right elbow, the left elbow, behind the right elbow, and right behind the free throw line. What can you say about this Chris Paul shot that he's figured out? He steps inside of the 3-point line and is able to elevate right around the charity stripe and makes his hay there. He made a shot, in front of the basket. He made a couple to the right of the basket, and he made a deep three from the upper left side. But beyond that, he's hanging around the charity stripe and cashing in from there. Just what you could say about his pull-up from that range, and what has that done to his game, and what does it do to defenses?
Well, what it does to a team like Milwaukee, who likes to drop cover, which basically what you give up with that is that mid-range jump shot. Chris Paul is an elite player. I mean, he converts that shot at a high enough rate that it becomes a good shot for him. I think the danger is, you hear people, you can, because the game has moved away from the mid-range jump shot, because across the board, analytically, it's not as high an efficiency shot as, layups, free throws, threes, which is basically what most modern offense is geared towards. But when you got a guy like Chris Paul who can convert it at a high enough rate that it becomes an efficient shot for him, but not for all players, I think it presents a lot of problems. And you saw that with Milwaukee, especially early in the series, that their defensive schemes are geared towards taking away the basket area and taking away the three at the expense of allowing that mid-range jumper. And Chris Paul and Booker made him pay for that, and early in the series. So when you got a guy like Chris Paul that is efficient in that area, it forces defenses to do things differently than they would like to, or than that they typically would do over the course of the season.
Yeah, and then we see on the other side for the Bucks, the fact that Drew Holiday in Game 3 was all over the place. In front of the basket, elbow, wing, corner, top of the key. What can you say about the Drew Holiday factor, and the fact that in this game, in Game 3, where the Bucks won by 20, Drew was efficient in every part of the court, from the wing to the elbow to the corner to the top of the key to inside of the paint. He made shots everywhere in game number 3.
Well, he's got to play well. We talked about that before. He stepped up, like in the deciding game against Atlanta. He was really good, but then kind of reverted to some of the struggles he had earlier in the playoffs, especially the 2 games in Phoenix. He was struggled to shoot, was inefficient, didn't play particularly well at the offensive end of the floor. And Milwaukee is the kind of team where they need him and Middleton and Giannis all be producing at a high level. Like they're not a team that is super deep and has a ton of offensive options after that. Especially since they're playing Lopez reduced minutes. So I think the holiday that we got in Game 3, I think is something that the Bucks are going to need going forward in the series if they're going to win it.
Yeah, and Holiday, a guy that's been around the block himself and found a way to become everybody, like we said, emphasis on Chris Paul throughout, the NBA playoffs, and this is his first NBA Finals. But I know we've talked about him a little bit, but to get back into the Drew Holiday factor of the Bucks, this is a player that comes from UCLA in 2009. 17th pick overall by your Philadelphia 76ers in the first round. And he has had his opportunities in Philadelphia. He was with the Pelicans forever and a day up until last season and then came over to Milwaukee. What can you say about Drew Holiday's kind of, over a decade in the NBA, his journey to get to where he's gotten to? Because we focus, like I said, on Chris Paul, but Drew Holiday was kind of one of those forgotten names that elevated into where he is right now. He comes onto this team this season, and in his first season with the Bucks, they're in the NBA Finals, and I don't want to miss the Drew Holiday factor, and I think he's kind of getting underscored a lot in this thing.
Yeah, he's a guy, earlier in his career, I think he always was respected as a very good player, but he's a guy that Milwaukee went out and, kind of bet on the here and now by bringing him in as the guy they thought could get him over the top. So I think, he's a guy that the Bucks, by bringing him in, that's part of the reason that Milwaukee isn't particularly deep, is what it cost them to bring Holiday in. So I think he's a guy that they, the Bucks counted on to be able to take them over the top and get them to a championship level. And I think, Giannis is Giannis, and I think Middleton has really solidified his standing in the league and everything. So I think Holiday's a guy who, as much as anybody on the Bucks team, how this series goes is going to shape the perception of Holiday. He's either the missing ingredient that they needed to get over the top, or if they come up short, especially if we get more of Game 1 and 2 Holiday, he's probably, he and Budenholzer are probably the ones that are going to bear the brunt of that. But on the other hand, if we get Game 3 Holiday the rest of the way, I think that, really bodes well for Milwaukee's chances to win the series.
Yeah, and seeing Drew Holiday, I'm just happy to see him here doing his thing and being effective. I also learned this morning that Chris Paul and I were born in the same year, which I did not know. Both 1985 babies. He's older than me, though. He was born on May 6th, so he's 36, and I was born on October 21st. So I'm the younger one of the two, but Drew Holiday and Chris Paul, two guys that I'm very happy to see journey through the NBA and find their way to have their swan song maybe be the best part of their career. So with that being said, Dave Pasiak, as always, longtime basketball coach, analyst, friend, and fan of the game, and here with us all throughout the NBA playoffs. Dave, as always, I appreciate your time. I appreciate your connection to the show and your dedication to coming on to the show. Really, since I came back to Syracuse, one of my first guests, if not my first guest, on the broadcast, and so I'm honored to go back to 2011-12 time, and almost a decade later, we continue to have this conversation, and more than anything, off the air, have built a strong friendship. So I want to thank you for all of that and for all that you do, and I want to thank you for taking care of today's youth and trying to be a good coach, a good mentor, and a good leader as you step forward.
Well, I appreciate the kind words, Dan, and I've always enjoyed coming on and talking NBA or talking sports in general with you, and on and off the air, and certainly value our friendship and our relationship as well. And hopefully we'll have a great rest of the finals to talk about.
Absolutely, a lot of good stuff coming up, Mr. Pasiak. In the meantime, take care of yourself, stay safe, and I'll talk with you soon.
Okay, take care, Dan. Bye-bye.
Take care. And coming from Dave Pasiak here on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora. We're going to take a quick step aside on Wake Up Call inside of the Cafe Kubal studios. And when we spin back around to continue on in MonPausPopcorn.com's What's Poppin', Joe Forgione, my fellow broadcaster, the man that I handpicked to be my co-host for my first baby, MU Courtside, will join us next, right after this on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora. And if you've never heard us together, all I'll tell you is whether you're in a car or not, it's time to buckle up. In these unique times, there are those in our community that give us a sense of normalcy and positivity. Pizza Man on 50 Oswego Street in Baldwinsville has been here for you for over 35 years and is here now. Call 315-638-1234 or order online at pizzamanbville.com to bring those familiar tastes into your home. And remember to come see our monthly on-site broadcasts centered around the community and our Baldwinsville beats. Pizza Man in Baldwinsville. Any way you slice it, they are always here for you.
I had a deep feeling that God wanted me to do something bigger with my life and to help people, help others. He kept putting Chick-fil-A in my life, and I realized as I was going through the franchise selection process that positively impacting the lives of others was really core to what we do here at Chick-fil-A. First of all, it starts with the food. The food is brought in fresh daily. We bring in local produce. We prepare to order in the kitchen. We hand bread our chicken. We hand spin our milkshakes. It's great food. It doesn't taste like fast food. I think the second thing is the way people feel when they come in a Chick-fil-A restaurant. It's different. We try to treat people with intentional kindness here, which is very different and deeper than good customer service. And so I think it feels remarkable for most people to come in a Chick-fil-A restaurant. And then lastly, the impact that we try to have in the community is very different. It's a big part of the expectation of every operator of a Chick-fil-A restaurant is that they're actively engaged in their community, they're a leader in the community, and they're making a difference. When they realize that what we're striving to do is to shine a little light in their life, that's a very, very different experience than you will have in any other quick service restaurant. And it's that remarkable experience that I think people will emotionally connect with.
I'm George Townsend of Honda City with some good advice when buying a new car. The true cost of owning a new car is determined by the appraised value when you trade it. No vehicle appraises higher than a Honda. Next, look for low APRs and deep discounts. You also want low maintenance costs and great fuel economy. That's why my advice to you is to buy a new Honda. Looking pre-owned, visit our Honda Certified Used Car Center. Honda City, 7140 Henry Clay Boulevard, Liverpool, or HondaCity-CNY.com.
It would be a pity if you don't shop at Honda City.
This is Jimmer Sikowski, owner-operator of Chick-fil-A Cicero, 7916 Brewerton Road in Cicero, right in front of the Home Depot.
Our corporate purpose at Chick-fil-A is to glorify God by being faithful stewards of all that's entrusted to us and to positively influence all those who come in contact with Chick-fil-A. And what became increasingly clear from our success in Cicero is that people love Chick-fil-A. And also I think we recognized that, we had a great opportunity to grow the brand and grow our platform. I felt incredibly grateful when I was selected to be a Chick-fil-A operator. I think what it's meant for me, what I've come to realize on a very deep level is that this is a calling for me. It's not a career. It's not a job. The Lord called me to be a Chick-fil-A operator and to use these restaurants to glorify Him and to positively influence other people. I'm blessed. I'm very blessed.
Head to Chick-fil-A Clay on 3974 State Route 31 in Liverpool, New York. Welcome back here to Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora on wakeupcalldt.com, your one-stop sports shop, and on mixlr.com/wakeupcalldt, as well as on facebook.com/livenowdt, facebook.com/wakeupcalldt, and on youtube.com/wakeupcalldt. So plenty of places to listen in every Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. Eastern Time. We're inside the Cafe Kubal studios. For those of you that know all about Cafe Kubal, you know they're located all throughout central and upstate New York on 3501 James Street, 324 West Water Street, 208 North Townsend Street, and 401 South Salina Street, all in Syracuse, as well as inside of Golisano's Children's Hospital, 343 Fayette Street in Manlius, and their newest location, which is their first ever drive-through on the nostalgic Sweetheart corners of the history of Central New York, right there in North Syracuse on the corner of Route 11 and Taft Road, where we started off the week with a live show on site with CNS Athletics Director Tim Bednarski. And you definitely want to check out that video. It's on youtube.com/wakeupcalldt and on facebook.com/wakeupcalldt. And we're going to add it to the wakeupcalldt.com homepage so you can check it there as well. So make sure you don't miss out on that. With that being said, inside of MonPazPopcorn.com's What's Poppin', we are here in hour number 2 with the person that I hand-picked to be my co-host for MU Courtside at Marywood University. There was nobody else that I would have picked. There's nobody else that I tried to... When I had to find somebody, I appreciate everybody that sat in the chair next to me, but in my 4 years at Marywood University, this was the person that I picked to be on the show with me. And all these years later, to know that this man can still warm my heart, make me laugh, and give me a lot of things to be proud of. He is one of the people that I value the most in this world, and we don't talk nearly as much as we should, but every time we do, it always counts. So with that being said, Joe Forgione is here with us. He joins us as a person who has broadcasted and done a tremendous job in the world of sports. We got a lot of things to talk about today, and undoubtedly we'll have some laughs on purpose and probably on accident. With that being said, let's bring him in. Joe, how are we doing today?
Hey, good morning, Dan.
And how's everything right now? Joe is a father, for those of you to paint a little picture here, Joe is a father of 2, and Joe's wife is another version of himself. So how's life as a dad and a husband?
So life as a dad is it's a lot tougher than I thought it was going to be, and life as a husband is it's easy when you find the right partner. So everything's good in that channel, but I'm still learning daily on both avenues, to be honest with you. But especially with the kids, I'm learning quick because they don't give me a chance for any type of error.
And that's the thing too. I got to talk to you about this. You do a lot of videos, you do a lot of stories on Facebook with the kids. And you do a lot of slow-mo action with the children. You've always been somebody who appreciates the production of things. Bring me into doing these little short produced videos with the antics of your children.
Well, what I like to do is I like to archive these because when they get older, I want to show them kind of how ridiculous they were as children. I know they're doing normal things as kids, but to live it and see it in living color is really something else. So the slow motion kind of slows it down for me, but I also feel like it brings some drama to the videos as well. And people that are listening, they haven't seen them, but when you slow things down like your kid's on a swing or they're jumping off of a rock, you can really see their expressions on their face and how the pure joy of just doing something so simplistic, especially at this age. My son is 2, going to be 3, and my daughter just turned 1. And we had her in the middle of Corona, in the real thick of it. So that was interesting. So she's always going to have an interesting story. And my son, being the firstborn, he's going to have a ton of stories because I didn't know what to expect in the delivery room. And they just kind of told us to leave the hospital, and I was begging them for at least another day. And my wife was like, "We got to leave." So I asked for a late checkout, and none of the nurses found that funny at all.
Yeah, I always ask for a wake-up call, so but yeah, I think I'll be doing that too because I realized it doesn't matter what you have in a hospital. You have open heart surgery at like 8 a.m. and by like 12:30 they're like, yeah, you should probably go home. So like It's my dad had back surgery, and my dad's got like a tube in his mouth, and he can't move, and he's drowsy. And they're like, yeah, we're going to send him home tomorrow. And my mom, this was years ago, my mom goes, we have 30 stairs to go up to the bedroom. Where do you believe that all 4'11" of me is going to take this 6-foot man upstairs with his back this way and hope that he doesn't like fall? He can't lean on me. So like, I just remember the hospital going, we did the surgery. It's up to you now. Like that's, it's on you now. But I mean, that's what they said. I mean, I remember my friend Jen, she had a baby this past year during Corona, and I called her, and she texted me back, and she goes, sorry I didn't answer. This is what she said. She said, sorry I didn't answer the call. Just had a baby about 2 hours ago. And I was like, what? And she goes, but I should be able to call you tomorrow between 3 and 4. And I was like, why don't you take a break? You know what I mean? Like, I mean, I feel like as a husband, I'm going to be that guy where like, wife pops out the baby and I'm going to go, why don't you take the next 3 months off? You know what I mean? Like there's no way, and I've had this conversation recently here, there's no footing that a man can stand on when another, like, no matter what a man says, a woman can always say, yeah, well, why don't you try childbirth? And I'm like, well, when we get kicked in the groin area, there's a moment where we get a rush of pain. We feel like we're going to have, there's really no way to put it. We feel like our bowels are just going to explode. And if any man had a knife next to him in the moment he got hit there, we would all contemplate just, stabbing ourselves in the heart and being done with it. So, but the childbirth side of things, I've already been told that if my back hurts and I come home and she's pregnant on the couch, I'm not allowed to talk about any pain in my body for at least 9 months.
Well, I'll tell you, my wife is a super trooper when it came to that. I mean, I was very involved in the delivery process, which I had no idea. Like I didn't sign papers or waivers, or I thought like I'd be in the delivery room and I would just kind of sit there and watch and, just be there to console my wife. But I was a big part. I grabbed a leg. I had one leg, and I was cheering her on, and it was an awesome experience, but one that I didn't know was about to happen, especially with my son, because the nurse looked at me when I was like sitting down on that uncomfortable couch that they have in there, and I was sitting down and she was standing up. My wife's on the bed, and I was kind of terrified because my wife was in the pain that she was in, and the nurse was like, "Okay, Dad," because they call you Dad as soon as you go in for a baby. Your name, you don't have a name, you're just Dad.
Yeah.
So she goes, "Okay, Dad," and I'm like, "Okay, we're ready." And she goes, "No, stand up and grab a leg." And I was like, "What? I'm not trained for this at all. Like, I have no idea what you're about to do."
Yeah.
So I was glad to be there. I was glad to have the experience I had, but I give my wife a lot of credit because she went through an immense amount of pain. With my daughter, she had a bunch of the Braxton Hicks, which is the false alarms. Those are painful for her. And she always said that she wanted to hook me up to that. They have like a machine that kind of simulates.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah. I very much had somebody show me the video to that they hooked a guy up to it, and the doctor put it on like a 2, and the guy was crying, and he's like, we didn't even put it up to like 9 yet. So.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't do any of that. But, a lot of credit goes to her. But that comes with being a father, and I'm glad I was there for that. It was a real special moment. So it was nice. I cried both times.
Yeah, well, the quota wake-up call for this week is speaking about childbirth, and you going, yeah, I give my wife a lot of credit. I'm gonna give her the majority of the credit today. So I think that's fantastic. If Crystal was here right now, she'd be like, I'm taking all the credit. So, but can we please talk about, before we get into anything sports related, can we talk about the fact that your wife is the Rodney Dangerfield of your life? She is the queen of one-liners, and she refutes like every stereotype, like not stereotypical, every cliche line she has a response for, and I think it's incredible.
Oh, my wife, yeah, she's very quick, very witty, and she's very confident. She can say things that sometimes don't make sense, but her confidence level will make you believe that what she just said makes sense, and you have to make sense of it before you figure out that you have to debunk it. Because some things that fly out of her mouth are pretty funny, and some things I just sit back and I'm like, who thinks of these things that she says? Especially, listen, being a wife and being a husband is totally different when you have kids. And now it's almost like, I feel like it's like the collegiate level of football to the NFL level, where everyone talks about like the speed. You know, they say like a quarterback has to adapt because of the speed of the game. To me, that's the transition between being a married couple and then a married couple with children.
Well, it's funny because Jim Gaffigan said, he was like, what did he say? He goes, I have 5 kids, and and he was like, if you want to know what it's like to have 5 kids, he said, just picture you're drowning, and then someone hands you a baby. so you know.
It's pretty accurate.
You know, and it was funny because he said, he goes, you know, if you have 1 kid, they're like, oh, that's adorable. If you have 2, people are happy for you. He's like, once you have like 3 or more, like 4 or more, people are like, well, that's one way to live your life. And so you know, Jim Gaff.
True, because we hit the 2 mark, and a lot of people are telling us just to stop. Someone just said, just stop. Someone just told me, just stop. They're like, oh, how many kids you have? And I said, oh, I have 2. And they're like, oh, just stop there.
Yeah, don't even.
You know.
Don't even pass go. Don't collect $200. Well, actually, you probably would collect in today's government. You probably collect a lot of money by continuing to have them. So, but you know, what is there like a new child? There's a new child tax or protection. I don't know. There's something. Basically, if like you're a child, you get money. So I think my buddy told me that. He goes, during Corona, my kids both got checks. And I was like, well, that's nice. Your kid's 2, and your other kid was born like yesterday. So like, it's pretty incredible and pretty interesting. But you know, being a dad of 2. So tell me about this. What's the difference between being a boyfriend, a fiance, and a husband? And then second part of the question, what's the difference between being a husband with no kids and a husband with kids?
So I feel like the boyfriend, fiance, husband thing is you're looking a lot into the future, where everyone has different views, but I could go off of mine because it's what I live. You know, being a boyfriend, you want to be good enough to become the fiance, then you want to be really, really, really the best to become the husband, and you have the idea of kids, but it's almost just like a bullet point of what you want to get done, because you want to accomplish things in your relationship, whether it be, you know, building trust, building a good foundation, doing things together, spending quality time, understanding each other, and that obviously comes without having the ties of the children. But, you know, if you both share the view of having a child or multiple children, obviously makes it easier for their foundation, but it also is easier said than done. And also, you're so focused on the other person that you kind of pour everything into them, and they do the same for you, especially when you find, you know, in my opinion, true love. And then once you succeed in those things, and you have all what you sought out to have, and you get yourself set up, and whether you plan it or not, now you guys have a kid. Moving on to the second question, once you have that kid, in my opinion, everything changes. That's why it's very important to have a foundation, because once you have that kid, at least for me, my main concern is that child now. And it's not that, you know, the child's above my wife. It's just that it's new to me. I'm not sure 100% on what I'm doing. You can read all the books. You can listen to all the podcasts. You can try and have everything written down and think of every scenario. But, you know, nobody can tell you about the fact that one day your kid's going to take off his diaper with crap in it and put it in the freezer, you know, and that happened to me, and I didn't know what to do with it, you know, so I didn't know where it went. I thought he hid it under the couch. We had a scavenger hunt for a diaper. Now, you don't read about that stuff, you know, and so it's a more fast-paced world. You're not honed in.
Grammarly helps make your writing clear and concise, no matter where you...
Or a condo or a townhouse or a house with my wife.
Yeah.
You have this kid now, and you just worry about that kid for the time being. At least that's the stage that I'm at, because like I said, they're on the younger side. So I'm not at the point where I can go somewhere and be like, okay, go and have fun, and then I can kind of turn my back and talk to other dads. I'm at the point where I'm like, okay, let's play, and I'm walking up the slide with him at a playground, and I'm on the monkey bars with him just to make sure that he's okay. And my daughter is fearless, and she does the same, and I do the same with her. But I'm far from, kind of getting back to that. And we're working on it. We are working on it because we did realize that, you do take a step back because the kids become your world, and then you have to realize where it all started, and then you kind of almost rebuild in a good way.
Yeah, I honestly, I'm guessing every mom and dad have a toilet or have a story of, I guess every mom and dad in their own way have a diaper in the freezer, and I think that's amazing that you said. I mean, I couldn't stop laughing here in the studio, but the fact that you said that nothing can prepare you for that. Did you read a lot of books? Did you and Crystal try to read a lot, or I mean, how did you read? Did you YouTube videos? What did you do? Because there's like these mommy and me stuff, and there's like there's basically a book on everything now. But back in the day, my grandmother, when she was raising my mom and my aunt, she's like, we didn't have any books, and her mom had passed away when she was very young. So, she didn't even have a mom to go off of, and she was just trying to figure this out on her own. Did you read a lot of books? Did you watch a lot of videos? What did you do?
So, prior to our firstborn, I really didn't do anything, to be honest. What I did do, the only thing I did was listen to an Audible, like an audio book.
Yeah.
And that was about fatherhood and like how it was to be a father and the importance of a presence of being like a dad, and the realization of my life about to change, which kind of hit a lot of points that I didn't realize at the time, because I was like, you kind of hear about it, what are the main things that people talk about that have kids when they talk to someone that doesn't have kids? You're going to have a lot of sleepless nights. You're going to be worried. You're going to be scared. You're going to be a problem solver. And these are all things where like, yeah, I could do that. Yeah, no problem, sleepless nights. But then once, like I'm telling you, once you're really thrown into the fire and there's no turning back, that's when you really learn. Because that audio book was great, because I listened to a lot of things, and it was more for like the development of my child and how to deal with the fact that sometimes, he or she, at the time I didn't know. We were always surprised in the delivery room of the gender of our kid, but they kind of prepare you for what to expect as an umbrella. It was a really good audio book, and other than that, I didn't do much. Like my wife was more into kind of researching certain things and looking at stuff, but she also obviously was carrying the baby, so she had other things that she was looking into, because you could get into almost anything that could drive you crazy. Like they did. There's something called like I think they call them belly kicks with the baby, where you count the kicks or kick counts, and you count the kicks however many minutes in between the baby kicking, and because you want to make sure that it's healthy and it's still moving around. And to be honest with you, at some point I told my wife we stop, because it drives you nuts. They say you have you eat a little bit of sugar, and then you could feel the baby move, and then you're good to go. So I told her, I said, you're driving yourself crazy trying to write down when the last time this baby kicked. It's making you more nervous than anything else. And for some couples, this works maybe, or maybe they don't stress about it enough. But I know for us, we definitely couldn't keep going on that track, because we were going crazy, because you're thinking, oh, did the kid kick? Did he not kick? Did he or she move? Did they not move? And to be honest with you, it was stressing us out more than helping us out. So that's why sometimes those books are good to have a generalization, but you really can't take them literal until you're really in the fire.
Yeah, and being in the fire, you got two now. I just saw a video of your daughter grabbing a chair and just taking that wherever she wanted to do, and I think you played the song "Who Runs the World, Girls." So what's life like? You got a daughter, you got a son. What are you reading books now? Are you watching videos now? Or are you just trying to search the freezer for a diaper this morning?
Well, this morning my wife took the reins on everything, and but in the past when I've had, put it this way, it's a big difference in the house when my wife takes the reins early in the morning and when I take the reins earlier in the morning, because my wife is very organized, and she'll have things made and breakfast, and the difference would be like, hey babe, what'd you make the kids for breakfast? And she'd be like, well, Giovanni had a waffle, I made Grace a pancake because she's allergic to everything under the sun, so we have to make this allergen-free pancake. Giovanni had some fruit. Grace had, some leftovers. Giovanni wanted some pudding and yogurt. Okay, and then when I take the reins, she'd be like, if she wakes up a little bit later on and we let her sleep in, she'll ask, hey, Joe, what'd you feed the kids? And sometimes I'd be like, it's still only, 8:30, 9 o'clock. I'm like, they're not hungry yet. Or other times I'd be like, oh, they had fruit.
Yeah.
And she'd be like, and what else? And I'm like, fruit filled them up. I gave them a lot of fruit. I'm pretty sure they're going to be okay with the amount of fruit that I gave them. That'll hold them off till lunchtime.
Yeah. I gave him a whole watermelon, and it's going to take him about 3 hours to crack it open, but I'm pretty confident that this guy's going to get a piece out of it. So.
Absolutely. I gave him a chisel, and Grace has a hammer. So at some point, they'll crack it open to eat.
Yeah. I'm pretty I showed him those comedy routines where that guy used to smash him with a mallet. So. But by the way, we have to talk about the home run derby. In the first round, Pete Alonso hit 34 home runs. Can we talk about the fact that there's some there's a Mr. Met, obviously, that we all know, but is this dude not Mr. Met right now? Pete Alonso, 34 home runs in round number 1, and Ohtani looking at him, from behind the scenes, the look on this guy's face is like, all right, bro, I think I'm just going to sit in the back. Don't even let him know that I came. So
I think a lot of people felt that way. I couldn't believe, first of all, the way that they did the minutes again and the way that they did the home run derby. I thought they did a really good job, and they kept everyone engaged with that because it was just it was just constant action. I always thought about while I was watching that, I was thinking about if they didn't have the commentators there. It's hard to talk over so many home runs because if you can't count it. When he was up, you couldn't count every single one that he was doing if you were trying to tell people that it was going out of the park. Like, they had to just hold a regular conversation, and it was almost like this guy was just kind of playing in the background for, like, amusement, and they were like, oh, yeah, there's another home run, okay. And because he just kept – he was on such a roll. I've never really seen that. And Ken Griffey Jr. has the sweetest swing in baseball, in my opinion. And just the way he was engaged, and people don't understand the stamina that you really have to do what he did in the first round, nonetheless the entire derby.
Yeah, and the thing is, at one point he kind of calls a pause and, grabs a drink and whatnot. And I'm looking at this going like, at that point he had 18 home runs or 19 home runs. I'm like, dude, I think you can go home. Like, I think you got it. I think the trophy's there. Like, you know what I mean? It's kind of like in my case, I'm looking at this going, can he just bank these for the next round? Can he just go, yeah, I'm gonna use 10 here, I'm gonna use 18 there, I'm gonna give myself 6 to start off the final. Like 34 home runs. They gave him bonus time, and Joe, remember how it used to be that you had like 10 strikeouts or whatever? Like there was a way you used to go about it where it wasn't, it was based on the batter and what the batter did, but you like the clock. How many home runs can you hit with this clock winding down? I think it's great too. I agree with it very much so.
Well, yeah, because the action, I think that they felt that the action was always there. I feel like when they did it, I know old school was like like I remember watching, if you go on YouTube or anywhere where you stream, you can actually look up like the old Hank Aaron and you can look up like the old home run derbies where like Mickey Mantle took part in it, and it was very personable because they were there, no one's in the stands, and they would do it for X amount of dollars, and they would do the 3 outs, and then they would switch, and then they would do the innings, and then I know it transformed to what they were doing more recently, and I just feel like they thought that they were kind of losing viewers on that, probably because it was as much as you want to say it was fast paced because the home run derby, it was on the slower end. If you compare it to what we just saw with Alonso and Soto and Tani, all those guys. There's no comparison if you're looking for fast pace and constant action.
Yeah, and I don't know why I said 10 outs. I think I was watching. It was something I probably played on one of the games. But yeah, I mean, they used to have the out rule that used to be the way, and now they do the clock. And I think the clock is great because the thing is, if you strike yourself out, you kind of kill yourself in the whole thing. And it's just, it's kind of ridiculous to me that it's like, it's kind of on them, like, oh, okay, I messed up, and then it just counted against you. I think the time is great. They give you a clock. They should have done this the whole time. I mean, are you surprised that it was never on a clock? I mean, it's a 4-minute round length that we have now. I mean, what's your take on it now? The fact that we have this clock that counts down and gives you a chance to do it. Are you surprised that they did it any other way now that we get to see it in this type of action? Because I would think this is the way it should have always been.
I can see where they got it from prior to doing it like this, and I kind of appreciate the fact of how it's evolved. I know a lot of people fight things, especially new things, especially with baseball, like the whole extra inning runner on second thing. I know that has a lot of backlash, and then obviously the instant replay, that caught a lot of backlash, and now they're still talking about having the automation for umpiring, which I can understand both sides of it, but it also takes away from the personality of the game because you have a human calling balls and strikes. So I'm not surprised at why it was never always done like this, because in my opinion, if they did it like this years and years ago, they're going to tweak it eventually anyways. I just feel like we are in such a fast-paced world, and what was the big thing in the 90s? Everyone wanted the long ball, which is why, you had the steroid era, and everyone was craving for home runs, and they kind of gave it to them, and now, they're seeing the backlash on that, especially from the players trying to get into the Hall of Fame, and people that played it, and now they're coming out saying that they took performing enhancements and whatnot, but people always love the long ball, and this is going to give it to you more and more and more, obviously, as you can see. I mean, he hit 35 home runs in the first round. I mean, that's insane. And I'm telling you, people do not understand the stamina. And now, that home run derby was kind of leisure-like back in the day. I'm not taking away anything from, like, the, Ken Griffey's and Barry Bonds or anything like that. But I'm telling you right now, the stamina for this type of home run derby, this is actually showing off athleticism as well, beyond the fact that you can swing the bat. That stamina. If you watch Soto in the home run derby, and you can pull up his clip alone, and you don't have to fast forward through it all, you can see him getting gassed. Yeah. You can actually watch his at bats, and you can see his demeanor and his body language and his elbows and you can just tell. I mean, he was a powerful hitter regardless, but you can see that he was getting gassed, and a lot of other players too.
Yeah, I mean, it is. I mean, you think about just your arms. You're a human being. This isn't, you're not a robot, and just swinging it and powering that through and feeling that on. I mean, you got to be icing his arms the next day like crazy. But I mean, this is. I'm watching it right now in the studio, and I'm watching. He had almost 20 in the semifinals, and then he's got to beat 17. I think, in the finals, and he has 12 with 36 seconds left to go, and he's taking a little drink and then back up to bat and whatnot. I mean, Alonso is just it's incredible. I mean, looking at the amount of home runs that he hit, he had over 50 before he went to the finals, and
in the finals, he hit 7 back to back.
And that's the thing.
I think it was like 7. I'm sorry, it might have been 7. He had 7 or 8 back to back, and it was right before the time ran out for him, and then he walked it off with the one to dead center. But yeah, no, like you're saying, if you're watching that, it takes more than just the fact that you can hit a home run to win that derby now, which is what I like. I mean, there's certain things when it changes that I feel myself giving resistance to, just because of the era that I grew up in, and I'm sure the people prior to us in our age, they look at it and they're thinking, the same thing, like, things are changing, and that's just the way it happens. Once you understand that things evolve, and like I said, look at the home run derby. I think they revamped it. I think they're going to get a lot more people watching it, especially next year, especially since a lot of those are going to try and defend for the third time. I don't think anybody's ever done 3. I know they've done back to back. I think Ken Griffey was the last one to do back to back, but they're definitely going to get more viewership, and they're going to gain a lot more interest for it. Because the home run derby was slipping. I remember even prior to COVID, a lot of people, nobody really was kind of watching that. It was almost like the slam dunk contest in the NBA. I feel like it was just kind of slipping a little bit.
Yeah, and seeing him, get crowned the champion, and just, it was awesome. And what do you think about the gold chain in baseball? Because we see the gold chain emerging in baseball, and he put it on and spun it. And back in the day, when Flavor Flav used to put his clock on and spin the clock, people thought he was nuts. And now we're seeing it in baseball. What do you think about this? Pete Alonso gets handed a trophy, gets handed a big old gold chain, and he spins it as the fireworks go off. What's your take on it?
I think it's fun. I think listen, we're here for a short period of time. If that's going to allow people to have fun and enjoy it, I know there's going to be a lot of haters out there that say it's flashy, it looks gaudy, it's not classy. And are they right about that in your own eyes? Yeah, to each his own with your opinion. But if that's going to allow these people to have fun and allow these players to enjoy themselves, that's what the game is missing. I think. I love baseball. I know with my son, I want to watch a ton of it, and as my daughter gets older as well, I'd like to do the same. But it's definitely missing that kind of that relief. I feel like it's just stressed. It's just stressed a lot. And honestly, with Alonso, he's just such a good guy and a good person, and that's just something that baseball really, really, really needs. And I think he's good for it. I think they have a lot of young talent, and I think that the Major League Baseball has a bright future. If these guys keep their nose clean, then they could kind of keep that statute up to where they have decent players that eventually are going to turn into decent role models, because that's what you realistically need. That's the whole point that I think professional, any type of sports, is you got these kids looking up to you. So if they have a spinner around their neck, they got a spinner around their neck. What are you going to do? I think it was hysterical. I couldn't take him seriously when he spun it. The only thing that Alonso did for me that had me in question was when he said that he was the best power hitter on the planet. He said that, and I kind of was like, listen, stay humble. You're winning the home run derby. You're on the New York Mets. You guys are in first place right now, but just stay humble, because those words will turn into your demise quicker than they'll boost you.
Yeah, and that's the thing, too. And you bring up a great point of, staying humble is, in the moment you feel great and you feel wonderful, but you and I both know in the broadcast and media world and PR, we feel great. We get on a high, right? There's things that are natural and moral and good that we get a high off of. And when you have that high, when you have that great feeling, when you're reaching your dreams, you're attaining something and you're doing it the right way and you feel amazing, you have to remind yourself that in that moment, you don't say certain things, even if you feel them. There's certain things that don't come out of your mouth. And, like if I'm broadcasting and you and I felt good and we're doing MU courtside and this and that, and I feel like, we're the best in the business and nobody can beat us, I don't say on the air, I'm the best broadcaster that ever lived. You know what I mean? Like it's not, even if you feel in your heart of hearts like nobody can. I've said things before where I've said, if you want somebody to take my MU courtside job and you got 500 people standing outside, put all 500 people next to me and I'll walk them in and out of this door because nobody's taking my job. Like I've said that before. But to say I'm the best that ever lived, or I'm the, what I mean? Muhammad Ali is known for, known for that, and people go, oh, okay. And, there's some people, I guess, that can get away with it. Michael Jordan came out with a quote that said, about the GOAT conversation that, he never lost in the first round of the NBA playoffs, and he took, a hit at LeBron James. But there's not a lot of class that comes with saying I'm the greatest. And, I think Ali is the only one that got away with it. Do you know any other athletes that you feel have gotten away with saying they're the greatest?
No. I think it's always come back to them, to be honest with you. And if you look back at all the greats, the ones that held their legendary status, not many of them even have that sense in their mind. A lot of them are humble. If you walk through Cooperstown, a lot of them were. You've had some some people that were, a little bit more out there and a little bit more of a spitfire. But I'm talking like the real higher up legends. If you listen to when they talk, and I'm talking about a lot of the Yankees, a lot of the Hall of Famers that are in there now, the Gibsons, the ones that we've lost recently, a lot of them were humble. I mean, they were cocky with their game, and they showed it on the field, but they never were that outspoken, and they never let the moment get over what's in their head and what's in their heart. And these are just things that you can follow out. I'm not trying to be like an old man and saying you can't be happy for the fact that you won the home run derby, and that no one's thinking you're good. But you got to remember, you had some powerhouses that sat out of that home run derby as well. I mean, you had Vlad Jr. opt out of doing the home run derby for his reasonings. But did you see the home run he hit in the All-Star game?
Yeah, that's the thing. So,
I mean, it was you got to watch Tatis when he hits that home run. Vlad Jr. with this power, and this year he's having a huge rebound year, and if that guy is a power hitter, and you can, like I said, you just stay humble, and and you're on the Mets, so you gotta play, you gotta keep playing, you gotta keep playing the way you're playing now, and make some damage in the playoffs and make a name for yourselves. And Pete Alonso's in the league. He's a young player, rookie of the year. He's got a lot on his belt right now, and he can add to it. So I just hope he just stays the person that he is and just remains with the clean nose, because the major leagues needs another Jeter.
Yeah, and I think it's awesome, kind of what you just said, showing that my grandmother is always with me. She always told me, keep your nose clean. And you mentioned it twice. And so, I said, Grandma, what's your advice? She said, pray to God, keep your nose clean, and be a good boy. That was her thing. And that was it. And it was as simple as that. And I can appreciate that. I'm watching Vlad right now in the All-Star game, and the homer that you're talking about here. I'm watching him get after it here, and I mean the thing that's great, and another piece of this too is seeing the teams that have these players now. I mean, these powerhouse guys are on the Blue Jays. They're on the Mets, who have long been embattled with things, and they're on the San Diego Padres. Who would have thought San Diego would have one of the biggest contracts ever, and whatnot in this? So I think, do you think baseball is changing now that, the Blue Jays and the Padres and even the Mets, as opposed to, just the Yankees in New York, are really getting these players, and I mean, I never thought I'd see a day where the Padres were signing a contract with a player that is so outrageously high that it's one of the top 5 ever in the history of baseball.
I think every team's evolving. I think their farm leagues are getting stronger. I think the talent that the collegiate level is pushing out is getting better and better as the years go on. I'm excited because I feel like there was a little bit of a lull with baseball. As much as I love the sport, I have to keep it honest. I think, honestly, the last few years with Jeter kind of fluttering out in his career, I think that it was slower. I mean, you had Mike Trout kind of, I can't believe it's even, have to think that way, but he was flying under the radar for some time. A lot of people didn't really realize what Trout was doing, but I think it was overshadowed by, Jeter hanging up his hat and people not knowing when, and when he wanted that extension, and the Yankees were, double guessed, they weren't giving it to him up front. Like, in my eyes, it was a no-brainer. It's Derek Jeter. He's going to be a Yankee for the rest of his career. You sign him, and that's the end of it. But I remember even talks were talking about, like, where would he go afterwards, and the fact that they were even thinking about letting him go into another jersey, it's almost an embarrassment. But I feel like it was overshadowed by him because no one knew when he was going to hang it up, and then you also had Mariano, and you had all these greats on the Yankees that outshined a lot of things. And you're talking seasons. I feel like they outshined these seasons. And then, you had Jeter leaving, and I feel like he was a superstar. And then the dust kind of settled, and the new stars started rising. And I think now we're kind of where the wheels and the whole system is kind of moving in one motion. And it's just if they keep playing their cards right, and you're going to get these role models out of baseball, you're on the right track right now because there's a lot of good coming out of the sport, and it's not just viewership and money. You have personable players that you can clearly see enjoy the game. Someone said to me, I think it was a couple weeks ago, we were talking baseball, and they said, anybody in this era could play in any era in baseball. And I said, you're probably right when it comes to athleticism, skill, and concept, 100%, knowledge of the game and all that. And you can't dispute that. The players now are they're on a totally different level, but the playing fields change, rules change, strengths change, our bodies changed. You can just see the physicality of the game has changed. But in my opinion, the way that their mindset was and their heart for the game is a lot different back then. You got to remember, some of these players were sent off to war, and a lot of their stats were hindered because they spent 2, 3, 4 years at a world war. Yeah. And I got to be honest with you, I think this day and age, if you were to morph those together and you had to tell half of these players, hey, listen, you can't play professional ball anymore. You are in the tip-top shape of your category. You have to go off to war. I can't say that they would have responded the same way that players back in the day did, which they were proud to do what they do and then return. And then not only when they returned, they played baseball, they returned and they just kind of never skipped a beat.
Yeah, and I think, bringing my dad for Father's Day weekend to Cooperstown, and, he brought me when I was like 7, and I got to return the favor 28 years later and bring him over to Cooperstown and, get us tickets and everything. I think going through the wall and seeing all the plaques of all the people that are in the Baseball Hall of Fame, you see underneath a bunch of them that it said, World War II vet, or that they served in a war. And I never realized how many players served in a war. And just to see that, and like you said, I mean, what a player today, if they were told by the government, hey, you got to stop playing baseball at the peak of your career, peak of everything you got. Your team is in first place. You're, 3 games up or 5 games up. Plus you have 50 some odd home runs. Plus you're about to get a big contract. And I need you to go risk your life and fight World War III. How many people would go, yeah, okay. And I think, back then, I mean, we just see that. And some of the greatest players ever in the history of the sport of baseball were war veterans, and it's crazy to think about that. And the fact that, they came home. So I think that's a great point to bring up is, knowing that some of these players in the middle of everything went and fought a war and put their lives on the line as opposed to, playing baseball. And I just think that that's insane. And it really shows America's pastime because some of the greatest players are war veterans and they played Major League Baseball. I mean, that's just, how do you, right, and they're Hall of Famers. So how do you, I don't even know. I mean, how do you write a better story and then, you add in that they fought in these wars, and it's incredible because all of the players and the people in general that are in the Hall of Fame, they have something right underneath their plaque that shows what war that they fought in. And I was so blown away by that. It's a great point that you brought up, Joe, because I would have forgot to mention the fact that, these players aren't just some of the greatest names in the history of the sport. They're people that literally put their life on the line for America.
Yep, and that's very true. And my mind immediately goes to their stats and how they still made Hall of Fame and what they lost out on X amount of years of where they are padding their stats. Like they're comparing players for players. Like everyone's got the big debate on who's the best player ever. Was it Mantle? Was it Ruth? They talk about Shoeless Joe and all that, and Ty Cobb. All these players are great ball players, and you bring it to modern day. That sport is thirsty for the next Mantle, Derek Jeter. They're thirsty for someone like that. They try and Mike Trout is the closest thing that they're going to get now because he's well into his career and he's made his stats, he's made his presence known, he's become more popular. I mean, if you want to get into baseball cards, his baseball cards are on the rise for sure. And, he's going to be the closest thing, but he's just, I feel like he's recently been found on. I know that he's been doing it, like I said earlier, under the radar, but, these kids need someone to look up to play these sports. They really do. That's what sports, I think that's half of the joy of it. I think it's the game itself, and then realizing that kids are going to grow up to aspire to kind of be like someone else that plays the same sport as them.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing is the beauty of this, and the fact that, there was a day where Mike Trout was watching players play, this game that he loves, and he was saying, I'm going to be that guy someday. I'm going to get that chance someday. And I think that's one of the coolest things, and one of the coolest kind of side-by-sides to see is to see, like, Mike Trout watching Derek Jeter and then growing up to be Mike Trout. And I think, that's the thing, is the torch is always passed. But I got to ask you, so you're down in the New York, area. You're not on the island, as we talk about, but you're close. And, we see the fact that the Mets and the Yankees are down there. What can you tell me about the feel of the air and the climate of current baseball with the Mets and the Yankees down with you living so close to the city?
Well, the Yankees are having a tough year. If you talk to their hardcore, fans, I like I'm a New York Mets fan, but I also enjoy good baseball, so I'm not a Mets fan that hates the Yankees. I just enjoy good baseball, but I side with New York Mets, born and raised, and grew up loving the Mets with my father. But the Yankee fans are very tough on the Yankees right now because they're not playing the best ball. That's putting it lightly. And the Mets, I think the Mets are just kind of, they're in that hold phase. If you talk to the Mets fans, the unrealistic ones are going to just tell you, we're going to go to the World Series. But I think the more realistic ones, as I consider myself a realistic New York Mets fan, it's just kind of like, just hold. It's kind of like we're in silent mode where, we ended losing to the Pirates on a bad loss for the half the year. And the Yankees didn't finish the first half the way that they wanted to. And I feel like once you start counting the Yankees out, they kind of pick up steam. The Yankees are missing, in my eyes and what I've seen, besides the ability with relief pitching and some of the pitching that they have in their lineup. I think they're missing that the team unity aspect of baseball right now. I feel like they're pressing hard. I feel like they're almost at finger pointing mode. I feel like they're pressing to win because they realize that the screws are starting to tighten on them, and the season is going to be in the second half. So I feel like they're pressing a little bit more, and you can see it, and you can honestly feel it with the way the fans talk about it and the way that they're playing their game. Baseball is an individual sport to begin with, and you need that team chemistry to kind of make the distance. You can tell watching the Yankees, the individual part is starting to take over because you have injuries, but you have so many players that kind of are just in that mode where they're just, you can see the chemistry is not there. And it's not to say it's not going to get there, because it can. But if you're going to compare the two, I think the Mets team and their chemistry, and they're also battling their injuries, but I think that they're in a better place when it comes to that. But I tell the Yankees fans all the time, because I have a couple of my friends that are already counting them out for the season. They're still playing above 500 baseball, which is what the Mets would kill for almost any other year, and they still have a chance to make the turnaround. So don't count them out, just yet. I mean, they can still do what they need to do, and they're battling injuries. New York, as a whole, right now for baseball, they're all battling injuries.
Yeah, and I think, there was a time where the Mets had double-digit players that were injured and not on their roster, and it was funny because I was talking to I got to shout out Janice on this. I was talking to Janice. She's a huge Mets fan on Long Island, and we were discussing the Mets team, and she was like, look at how we're playing, and we have whatever it was, like 12 players or 14 players on the injured list. And she said, we're playing with our third stringers. And I said, well, Janice, you know who the fourth string team, you know who they are of the Mets, so you're playing with your third stringers. Do you know the fourth string that's behind that third string for the Mets? They're called the Arizona Diamondbacks. And that's my favorite team, and they're garbage. So, I mean, there's no team that is farther. I don't want to say garbage. They're a diaper in the freezer. And what I feel about my Diamondbacks is they're the team that's the farthest back. They're like 30 and a half games back. It's ridiculous, and it's sad, and it's awful. We're having the, Major League Baseball draft has been going on, and they got one of the high picks. They got like the number 3 prospect in the top 250 players, whatever. But Joe, you watch a good amount of baseball. What can you tell me about the Arizona Diamondbacks?
Well, I don't watch them as often as, I watch a New York team, but baseball nowadays is a lot different than when we first started aspiring to watch and be engulfed in baseball. When we were growing up, the baseball team, like I said, it's the individual sport. It's besides golf, in my opinion, baseball is like second on the list of really being like, an individual sport, even though there's more than one player on the field at a time. In my eyes of sports, that's where baseball stands out. And honestly, growing up, you could see that. I mean, the chemistry and the teams were there, but it was really the individuals. I feel like, because you had your all stars like Ken Griffey Jr., who really stood out, and we were too young to really appreciate the fact that he was able to play with his father. And what I'm trying to drive at is there were special things that happened that you wouldn't realize if you didn't understand the game. And right now, a lot of teams, and including the Diamondbacks, they're missing that part of their team. They're missing the fun. They're missing the reason why they're playing, and it's hard to see because players make so much money nowadays that you can't tell that they're really upset by a loss, because let's be realistic, they lose the game, but they're still getting the paycheck. And a lot of them have converted to that mindset, which is why you're starting to see these teams kind of shy away, because if you have 1, 2, 3 guys in the locker room that are just like, hey, I love playing baseball, but I'm still getting paid whether I'm winning or losing, that slowly chips away at the team. No matter how you cut it and how much money you want to give players and organizations, the bottom line is this is still baseball, and it's still just a game. And if the love of the game starts deteriorating, it's going to show. And it doesn't have to show their entire career or a player's entire career or an organization for decades upon decades, but it will turn up, and it will turn its ugly face, and you will see it sooner than later, because at the end, it's just a game. And the Diamondbacks are on that list with me, where they need to figure out how they can kind of bring it all together. And same thing with the Yankees. I mean, the Yankees are in a totally different spot than they are, but if the Yankees can figure that part out, they'll be well off. The Diamondbacks also need to work on some talent in certain positions.
Yeah, the trash compactor of baseball, the Arizona Diamondbacks. So, that's where they are right now. I want to go to Pete Alonso really quick before we take a step aside for a fast break and make a note here. Pete Alonso this season, 68 home runs in 77 games played. Thoughts on those numbers? And if you added in his home runs from the home run derby, he would be over 100 now. So he would be at like 120. So what are your thoughts? 68 home runs in 77 games. Or pardon me. 68 hits in 77 games, 17 home runs in 77 games played. So I know I just astronomically blew him out of the water with home runs, but 68 hits, 38 runs in 77 games, 17 home runs. But seeing what he just did, he's got 17 home runs in 77 games, and he just hit 60-something in the home run derby. What do you think, Pete Alonso? I mean, obviously the home run derby is a very different thing than being in the thick of things of a game, but are you surprised seeing him in the home run derby and then seeing that he has 17 home runs in 77 games right now? Does that surprise you? Do you feel like now that, I mean, what is your view of Pete Alonso pre-home run derby and post-home run derby?
I always like Pete Alonso. I'm 100% biased because he's Rookie of the Year and the home run derby winner 2 years ago. If we're going to go prior to this home run derby, I just like him as a person. He reminds me a lot of David Wright when it comes to his charisma and his presence on the field and his ability to kind of move around and do what the team needs. And before that, before this home run derby, I had him on a pedestal for sure. I defended him a lot in conversation, and I think that he's on the path to be, and it's kind of a big thing to say as a Mets fan, I think he's on a path to kind of one-upping David Wright if he stays where he's at. I love David Wright. I think he was a great Met and part of the organization for a really long time, and struck him with the injury that he had was a sad story. But I think if Alonso can take a little bit away from him with Wright's humbleness and the way he played the game, I think that he's on to bigger and better things than he's at right now, which is a lot to say. And I think he's with a good organization right now. I feel like the Mets are really starting to put their pieces together. I like their recent pick in the draft with Rocker from Vanderbilt. I thought that was a steal that they got, and I can't believe that he fell to where he did, but the Mets scooped him up. And I feel like they just have an idea of where they're headed, and that's huge for the Mets because for a lot of years I feel like they didn't have a clue. I feel like they would just try and piece things together and hope it worked. I feel like now they kind of have some kind of outline of what they want to do, and baseball has a lot to do with luck, and I feel like if the luck kind of falls on their side and they keep at it, they're in a good spot. But as far as post-home run derby for Pete Alonso, I still see that, he's a young player in the league, and when he said what he said, he still showed a little bit in my eyes. He had flair, he had fire, he was enjoying himself. But if you have to just keep on reminding yourself, there's a bigger picture. The home run derby is great to win, and obviously if he lost, people aren't going to say, Pete Alonso's not a great hitter. But look at Ohtani, first round and he's out. Does he lose value to his team? Absolutely not. His ability to play the game hasn't changed because of a home run derby. But post home run derby for Alonso, I'm just happy for him. He's going to be one of those guys that wants to be a Met his whole career, and for that, you can't hate on that. You have to appreciate someone that doesn't want to move around and kind of take advantage of salaries and winning teams. And for now, he's just doing it right, and I just have a lot of respect for him. He's kind of what baseball needs. There's like 5 or 6 other players that are on his level when it comes to being up there that I wouldn't mind younger kids looking after and saying I don't mind growing into a ball player like that, whether it's my talent or just the way I think about the game or how I think about treating other people.
Yeah, and that coming from Joe Forgione this morning, my partner from MU Courtside, speaking on sports and life, talking about baseball and the home run derby as well as his Mets this morning on Wake Up Call inside the Cafe Kubal studios. We're going to take a step aside for a fast break and hear from some of our great partners here with Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora. When we spin back around, Joe and I will take a look at the standings of Major League Baseball currently, and as we're at our midway point of the season, we'll take a look at the standings, and then we will get into his Falcons and my Jaguars right after this, where sports meets life on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora, once again from inside of the Cafe Kubal studios.
Hi, this is Amy from Mother's Cupboard, home of the whole frittata. We are open daily 6 a.m. to 1:30 p.m. For takeout orders, call 315-432-0942 and tune in to Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora for our monthly food challenge and try our Wake Up Call signature menu item available 7 days a week. Here at Mother's Cupboard, we are Central New York, and it's our honor to serve you.
Ma and Pa's Kettle Corn and Popcorn Factory, located on 201 7th North Street in Liverpool, is home to over 40 flavors with more than 200 flavors in their total wheelhouse. Sky's the limit for this sweet and savory Central New York company. Keep it local at your parties, fundraisers, wedding showers, baby showers, and more by calling 315-450-MA-PA. That's 315-450-6272 for popcorn bars with custom flavors and colors at your upcoming event. Make sure to visit them on 201 7th North Street in Liverpool, New York. And for more information, go to maandpassnacks.com. Ma and Pa's Kettle Corn and Popcorn Factory. How corny are you? The Millhouse Market, located on 3790 New York 13 in Pulaski, New York, is worth the drive every time. Make sure you find your way out to the Millhouse Market on Tuesday through Saturday from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m., Sundays from 7 a.m. to 3 p.m., and of course, you can download their app on the Google Play or Apple App Store, and you will have all of their menu at your fingertips, as well as a map on the app that you can type in your location. It'll bring you straight there to Millhouse Market on the app itself, and you'll have all of the menu items, including the sandwiches named after the families that helps to settle today's Pulaski, ingrained in our community and ingrained in our taste buds. There is nothing like the Millhouse Market. And from their margarita pizza with the balsamic drizzle on the top, to their meatball sandwich, to their M&M cookies, and so on and so on and so on. And I love their breakfast pizza. There's so many fantastic things about the Millhouse Market. You got to bring yourself out there every single Tuesday through Sunday. And on the weekends, their bistro menu changes inside, so you got to come back every week to see what the new specials are going to be. The general store, the drive-thru, and the indoor restaurant open Tuesday through Sunday, all in one place on 3790 New York 13 in Pulaski, New York. Worth a drive with the family, with a date, or just by yourself. I drive up there with Lily all the time, so head out to the Millhouse Market. Worth the drive every single time. With that being stated here on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora, inside of the Cafe Kubal studios, a big shout out to Cafe Kubal and all the amazing things that they have done in our community and beyond. We appreciate them so very much. Cafe Kubal here with you on 3501 James Street, 324 West Water Street, 208 North Townsend Street, 401 South Salina Street, all in Syracuse. Downtown Syracuse inside of Golisano's Children's Hospital, and of course on 343 Fayette Street in Manlius, New York. And you could find them at the corner of Route 11 and Taft Road for Sweetheart Corner's new drive-thru location right there in North Syracuse for Cafe Kubal. We're hanging out with Joe Forgione here, my partner that I hand-picked at Marywood University to be my co-host for MU Courtside, and I couldn't have picked a better person. And it's funny how a decision you make in the past, I talked about it on yesterday's show, how past Dan helps present and future Dan. Well, if past Dan didn't ask this one guy who was walking by me in Regina Hall, and I was sitting there, I think, with Mary, Madonna Mama, and we were sitting there, and we were just kind of hanging out and talking, and Joe walks by, and a girl had an L cart, and she dropped a box off of it when she was moving her stuff, and he picked it up for her, and he helped her. He was walking right by her, and she dropped it. He stopped without even a thought, without even a hesitation, and picked up the stuff and started talking to her and helped her with everything and offered to continue to help her. And I said to myself, that's all I need to know. I've decided that based on everything I know in that moment, this guy's got to be my co-host. And it took a little bit of coercing. It took a little bit of, Joe's like, I don't know. I'm a little bit nervous. I don't know. I'll do one show. And then I was like, no, Joe, you got to do the whole season. And so eventually we ended up doing the last 2 years that I was at Marywood. We did those together, and then he took it over. and did an incredible job, handed it off to Brian Johnson, who did an incredible job, and eventually it got into the hands of Brendan Murphy, who did an incredible job as well. So I am so honored that whatever God did to lead me to Joe, to be here now so many years later, and we just had our 15-year anniversary of when we broadcasted together. So it's a beautiful thing to be able to have Joe here on the show today, and to show that one decision you make 15 years ago can pay off dividends and give you a friend for life. So with that being said, Joe is here with us to talk about a little bit more of baseball and to get into his Falcons and my Jaguars. But before we go anywhere, Joe, I wanted to publicly tell the world how thankful I am for the fact that you said yes to working on MU courtside, and that when I call you up nowadays, you still answer the phone.
Oh, absolutely. That was one of the best decisions I overcame a big fear doing that. So that was one of the best decisions I ever made, for sure. And thank you for the opportunity, because that really got me kickstarted on my confidence level. Because, I was, like you said, I was nervous, especially being fresh into college. I had a lot of thoughts running through my mind, and I got to be honest, being on TV and the radio was definitely not one of them. And it was a little nerve-wracking at first, but you made it a real smooth transition, which was good. I appreciated that. And I thank you for it. I mean, it's funny to know you now and to know that you were ever nervous. I think that's kind of the thing for me, is to think that you were ever like, I don't know, because I think about you on the radio and I think about you on TV and your production value and everything that you do. I mean, I have commercials play in my head all the time that I want to create. And I know that if I was closer to you, we would be making these on the weekend. And so to me, I'm just like, I'll tell people, I'm like, do you ever think about this, if you did something this way and you did a commercial and the guy did this and he said that at that moment, and they kind of look at me like, Dan, we're sitting in Cracker Barrel. Like, where did this come from? But it's always in my mind, and I'll tell my mom, and it's, oh yeah, that's, So anyways, and I'm like, but Ma, like, you don't get it. Like, this is comedic genius. This is gold. Like, we got to do this. And so, and you've always carried the production side in such a big way, and you've taught me so much, and, the programs that and the things that you do and the angles that you take. I just feel like God is hopefully shortening the gap of how far away we are from each other, because I think being closer to one another, like physically, as far as like, distance and miles and whatnot, I see that there's a lot of advantage to us being in a closer place, because we talk on the phone and we do this stuff and we've kept in touch over the years. But the reality of it all to me is I think that you make my talent come out more, and I would hope to God that I can do that for you. But you inspire me, and I feel like I want to do these things. I don't want to just talk about them anymore. Well, I learned a lot from you back in the day, for sure, because I never really saw that inside of me until you're kind of, listen, in a weird way, it's kind of like parenting, where I had no idea that it was in me to even do anything of that nature. And then you kind of just, I feel like I went to the edge of the cliff when you asked me to do it, and then by the time I could turn around from the cliff and saying, hey, listen, this is too much of a jump, you kind of put a parachute on me and just kind of kicked me off the edge and was like, good luck. And I was going down, like, kind of just saying, like, pull the string, and that was it. And I was like, okay, here I am. I have no choice. I'm here, and I'm going to make the best of it. And I learned a lot. And it teaches you, it at least taught me more life lessons than anything else. And I think that's important. And that's with anything, with any fear, growing as a person and kind of doing what you have a passion for, and doing the unknown, because that is where you can really, really learn a lot about yourself, is when you do the unknown and kind of scare the heck out of yourself and realize that it is what it is, and you just you learn from it, and nothing could be a failure as long as you're learning.
And I think that's the thing is, I guess now that you said that and I've thought about it, I've grown a career of kicking people off the ledge with a parachute. So and it's paid off, it has paid off. But for a kid who grew up scared, I'm very thankful to God that whatever whatever I've had to overcome in my life, that somebody would say to me, hey, you inspired me and kicked me off the ledge and told me to believe, because I was a guy who I thought was, not going to jump. And now I'm up there, pushing other people off of it, saying, listen, you got this. And, I think that's the only way we learn in life, calculated risks. And you got to take the chance. I mean, Joe, when I was on traditional radio, and I tell this story all the time, when I started my company, I had no commas in my bank account. I had almost no money in my pocket. And I had no idea how I was going to get on the air and do things the way I wanted to do it. But I was just done doing it other people's way. And now I'm sitting here this morning, and it's a real tangible thing. And if I wanted you to fill in for the show, I'd be like, okay, this is what you have to do. Here's the system. Here's the stuff. Here's the microphone. Here's the software. Like, it's a tangible commodity that, almost 10 years ago was an idea, and there was nothing else but my desire, my determination, my dreams, my faith, my hope, my belief. That's it. It was me and God sitting on that cliff going, okay, we got to jump. And he pushed me off. So I think I kind of leapt, and he guided me too. And we kind of went together, and now I'm seeing it. So I think the beauty of life is that there's something incredible about getting to the edge and having the faith to go and knowing what that does. So, and I think in everybody's life, we come to the edge, we come to the cliff. The zombies are chasing after us. We either get eaten by them or we jump. And so you have to jump, and some people get eaten and some people jump. But what I think is beautiful is the people that jump with no zombies behind them. And I think now, you jump, and you've jumped into being a father, you've jumped into being a husband, you've jumped into, this life that you lead now. You jumped into putting your life on the line and doing amazing things in our country that'll never go truly thanked as much as they should be. So, I mean, I think that you have been the epitome, professionally and personally, of jumping off a cliff, and whether you're afraid or not showing it. So, for the things that people know and for the things that people don't know, let me say to you, Joe, thank you for, your service, your sacrifice, and everything that you do to try and raise good children, be a good husband, be a good son, be a good friend, and do a lot of things in this world that people will never know that you did. And you did it with a big heart, so I got to say thank you for that.
Well, thank you, Dan. That's really nice of you to say. I appreciate that, and it's life is crazy and life is weird, and you can't predict it. And the second that you keep trying to predict it, that's when you think you have it all figured out. That's when you're the most wrong. That's what I've learned.
Yeah.
When you write something down, if you sat somebody down and you said, hey, let me ask you a question. If you had to say what's going to happen to you in the next week, and you wrote things down, I would every time look at that piece of paper and say, I can tell you right now that probably none of this is going to happen, because you have no idea.
Yeah, you don't. And
you have your own person, you have your own personality, you have your own morals, you have your own ethics, you have your own support system, whether it's, created from yourself or you have family, friends, acquaintances, anybody that stands behind you. But you almost can never, ever predict what tomorrow is going to bring you, nonetheless, a month, a year, 10 years from now, because it's all surprises.
Yeah, and I think the biggest change in my life that I saw, going off of what you're talking about, is at 16 years old, when somebody said, if you want to make God laugh, tell him your plans, I used to get mad. And now at 35 years old, almost 2 decades later, I know that God laughs when I tell him my plans. So like I live in a different world now, where before I was like, why would God laugh at me? God's supposed to love me, da-da-da-da. And now I get it. And now I tell other people and frustrate them when I say, if you want to make God laugh, tell him your plans. But the reality of it all is I wanted to be married in my early 20s. I wanted to have my first kid at 25. I'm 35 years old and I don't have any children. So, I think to me it's like I've realized I wasn't going to live where I live. I wasn't going to have a house at the time I did. I didn't know if I was ever going to get another dog again, and Lily just turned 5 years old. Like, I didn't think I was ever going to move from Florida, ever stop working at Disney. I thought my aspiration was to be on ESPN. I worked at 3 affiliates for ESPN, then I started my own company. I took a blink and my company turned 9 years old on June 12th of this year. So, you know, I can tell you, Joe, that, I mean, I thought I was going to go to Marywood and play basketball. I got called by Eric Grunman. I thought I was going to do it. And my senior year, I thought about, you know, I don't even think I said this to you. I thought about giving up MU courtside just to play, and I couldn't for the life of me do it. Like, I love the game of basketball so much, and I wanted to train, and I wanted to play, and I wanted to test myself, and I wanted to see if I could play NCAA basketball, but I couldn't envision anybody else sitting in my chair. And so, you know, I mean, life is such an interesting thing, and it constantly changes. I thought I was going to go to Syracuse University. I didn't. Went to Marywood. So, I mean, there's so many things that I could tell you I thought that never, ever happened. And I don't know if anything, I mean, outside of me chasing my dreams, but I mean, the fact that I can say I was in The Amazing Spider-Man 2, and that if Andrew Garfield crosses into the Spider-Verse with Tom Holland, then technically I'm in the MCU. Like, it's, you know, and my mom figured out that they were shooting because she was doing something in Rochester, and she called me, and I was with my grandmother at Ruby Tuesdays, which doesn't even exist anymore in Syracuse, and we were eating lunch, and I looked it up, and the first time I applied, I didn't get it, and I applied again, and I got it, and then I got used in the movie. And so, I mean, Joe, almost nothing outside of chasing my dreams, believing in my heart, and believing in myself, and believing in God, everything in the plan has gone out the window. And the only thing that's remained is my faith, my hope, my love, and my perseverance, and my comedy. But everything else has been kind of up in the air, and I think that the things that remain are the only things that count.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's why it's all you got is who you are as a person, kind of, and then you just kind of move on from that, and then anything else that comes your way, you just kind of combat the way that you're built to do so. And I feel like that goes for basically everybody.
Yeah, you know, it's like we are who we choose to be. And I tell people all the time, you got to be a good planner, but you also have to be a better ad-libber. As good as you are at planning, you got to be good at your hair's on fire and you're riding on a roller coaster whose track is about to break off. What are you going to do? And, you know, I feel like we have to live in that world every day. And if you didn't learn that from the pandemic, you didn't learn anything. Life can change in an instant. So you need to appreciate what you got. And you need to be willing to chase after what you have. And you have to be willing to really fight for what you want in life. Because if you didn't learn anything in the last year and a half, I mean, your life, everybody's life can change instantaneously. And it doesn't matter how much money you have, how many people you know, where you live, this, that, and whatever. Life changes, and when life changes, if you don't have a good support system, you don't have God, you don't have morals, you don't have values, you don't have drive, you're not chasing your dreams. People realized in the last year and a half, if they married the right person, if they were in the right job, because when you're sitting at home and you have nothing else to do but think, you realize really quickly, I don't like this job. I don't like this person that I sleep next to. Or I love this person that I sleep next to. I love my job. But, I mean, I think people realized really, really quick when God hit the reset button here, and he did it in my life earlier. But I think we learned very quickly, Joe, during this pandemic, if we were where we were supposed to be, or if if there had been a horrible detour off the line of where we were hoping to be.
Yeah, I think people realize that, you know, tomorrow's not promised to anybody, and it's kind of like, I feel like people knew that, but this past year and a half really showed them whether you want to believe it or not, because people hear that all the time, you know, oh, tomorrow's never promised, and there is a lot of truth to that, but I feel like it was more of a reality, and people could relate to it on a personal level within the past year and a half, because it was so much in your face, and, you know, making a change if you wanted to or needed to was never kind of easier, because you kind of had no choice, because if you told somebody prior to the year and a half, tomorrow was never promised to you, they'd be like, yeah, a lot of people would say, yeah, we hear that before, but, you know, the sun is going to rise tomorrow. And obviously, you know, that's a strong point. But then the pandemic hit, and now you say, hey, listen, tomorrow's not promised to anybody. That same person's view has to have changed this day. It had to have, because there's no way that you can just be passive about that. You really just don't know. And believe me, as a parent and as a husband, that hit hard, because someone told me when I first had a kid, I believe I was in the hospital, we were still at the hospital, it was pre-pandemic, so I was able to walk around the hospital and talk to nurses and you know, ask them for supplies for my wife. And one of them said, they asked me, like, oh, are you nervous? Like, how do you feel? And I was taken back a little bit, because they were so concerned with my wife all the time that no one really asked me how I felt, which I never really dealt with how I felt. And I remember I was standing dealing with what she was saying, and she was like, are you all right? And I was like, yeah, I'm just thinking about, like, how I feel. I haven't really had time to, like, I didn't think about how I felt about it. So I kind of just told her, like, you know, I'm nervous and I'm a little bit scared. This is my firstborn. And she looked at me and she said, listen, you know, the fact that you're concerned about that means that you're going to be a great father. She said, but I'm going to give you some advice that's beyond that. She said, just so you know, your days are going to be long, but your years are going to be short. And I didn't know what that meant. And I know my kid, my oldest is only 2 years old, so it's not like we're going crazy here. But I can tell you right now that now I can look back and really appreciate it. So getting back to what I was saying earlier, is you can say something to somebody and they can take it for what it's worth, but if they're not living in it, it's really tough to understand it. Because I heard the words that she told me, that the days are going to be long and the years are going to be short. And I was thinking to myself, like, that sounds kind of crazy, lady, but okay, I'll listen to what you're saying. But I hear your words, and I understand, like, how backwards it sounds, but I don't fully understand it. I didn't say this to her, I just was thinking it. And now I'm 2 years, about to be 3 years into having my son, and I can see the years flashing by, but the days are longer because you have so much responsibility, and these are things that you just can't prepare for. And I appreciated those words, because now it kind of helps me get by to where I realize that, you know, these days of parenting that are tough with the kids in diapers and who's screaming at each other and who's learning how to walk and the stress of everything, you know, they eventually, you know, God willing, they go away to the point where, you know, they're kind of on their own. And you're talking like years later, but it's going to happen sooner than later. So the pandemic was really able to ground me, to try and slow things down and say, hey, listen, this is one life we have to live, and we have to start really believing in what we want, and we want to start doing what we want, and we really need to take a step back and realize how precious it is to be here, because in a blink of an eye, like you said, it could be gone.
Yeah, you know, and appreciating the time you have and the people that you have it with. I mean, it's as simple as it is. I say it all the time. The only currency you bring to heaven is your soul. That's the only currency you have. So how you treated people, what is written on your soul, how you treated people, what you did with your life, that's all you have to show God. No money, no cars, no mansion, no nothing, no awards, no accolades. The only thing you have is you hand God your soul, and God takes a look at that thing and says, okay, what did you do? God takes that that DVD player, that VCR out, and he plays that tape from beginning to end. And so you can't afford to take a day off. And I think one of the greatest things that I've learned this week is if you're not willing to do it in public, don't do it in the shadows. And and just the reality of that, and the truth of that, and that loving in this world is the greatest. It's loving in this world is the scariest thing to do, but it's also the most beneficial. And I think
it's definitely rewarding when it works out. But that's the beauty of it, that you're not sure if it will. But that's part of the game. That's all part of the dance, you know?
Yeah, and as my friend Floyd Little said, you dance with the one that wants to dance with you. So, a lot of good stuff from Floyd. We could talk for hours about a lot of stuff. Joe and I have plenty more coming up, but today we will end on 3 final notes. The life stuff, so good and so much appreciated. And we'll have a final note on that because I'm not going to, there's a lot of heart in today's conversation, as there always is on Wake Up Call where sports meets life. So, Joe, quick, American League East, National League East, 2 highly contested divisions for the playoffs. The 4 out of 5 teams in the American League East are still in it. The Yankees and the Jays are 8 games back. The Rays are a game and a half to the Red Sox. The Orioles are 26 games back. But 4 teams within that division still there. The most highly contested division in all of baseball, of the 6 divisions, is the National League East, where the worst team is 9 games back, the Marlins. The Nationals are 6, the Braves are 4, the Phillies are 3.5, and the Mets are in first place. What are your thoughts on the Yankees' chances of correcting the ship? And what are your thoughts on the Mets' chances of holding fort here as we move forward into the second half of the season?
I think the Yankees are going to be just fine. Like I said, a lot of people that have their concerns, I can understand that. They've had some pretty heartbreaking losses. I don't remember the exact day, but it was very recent where they blew, I think, like a 4 or 5 run lead in like the 9th, and that was a bad loss, and that doesn't feel good as a former player, and honestly as just anybody that enjoys sports, no one likes to see that in general unless you're rooting for the team that's doing it. But even you at that time, if you're rooting for them, you have to know that that's a hard blow for the other team. I think the Yankees corrected. I think a lot of people are trying to blame management. I think that they just need the players to play. They need to get a little bit healthier. They need that chemistry because they're clearly not. They're really playing with. It's almost like they're just playing individually. And if they can kind of group together, even if it starts where, even if it's just a little bit of a lineup where you can just kind of see where they're just having fun again. Go back to playing baseball and having fun. But you're in New York, so the screws tighten a lot quicker in New York with the headlines and the media. And if you start playing into that noise, you're going to crumble. So it's the Yankees can correct the ship. I think that they will. I think they always surprise people. They do play a strong second half, and I think if their pitching can kind of get them over the hump, they really need their entire team to just come together and just do their jobs. And they need the chemistry. It's just not there. I'm telling you, it's just not there. I'm hoping that this break. I know Judge, was a part of the All-Star game, and he's the guy that's probably going to break the ice to where if you start seeing him loosening up and he's always smiling and trying to do things, if he can if he can get himself together to where he can bring other teammates aboard, he can really turn that around. And I don't think it's going to do with management. I think it's going to have to be the players that really step up as far as the Yankees. And as far as the Mets go, to be realistic, I can see them holding first. I think that they're in a good spot. I think that their confidence level is up there. I do think that they need to maintain what they're doing because, they're in first place, but like you said, the other teams are not far behind at all. I mean, the Phillies are only 3.5 back, and they have a good ball club. And the Braves, I know Acuna is injured, but it's next man up. And if they have a next man up, that really brings the heat and plays his game the way that they're supposed to. The Braves are scary as well. So I think the Mets can hold. I think it's healthy competition that the division is like that. Mainly because I think if the Mets had too much leeway, they would kind of slack off. Right now, they can't not look over their shoulder.
Yeah, and I think that's the biggest thing is the Mets literally cannot trip. The Yankees have to find ways to stop tripping, and the Mets can't trip is how we kind of look at things moving forward. Falcons and Jaguars, your team, my team. I'll ask you 3 questions about the Falcons, and you can ask me 3 questions about the Jaguars. My first question to you about your Falcons is, they have Mike Davis now, the guy that backed up Christian McCaffrey and filled in pretty well for him fantasy-wise as well last year in Carolina. Is Mike Davis the answer? What do you think of the running game in Atlanta this season?
I think it's going to surprise a lot of people. I don't think the Falcons are really going to flash like they are so used to doing on their offense. I don't know if he's the answer for your number one. I don't think that they're going to put up the numbers that they've been used to. I think losing Julio is a big blow for the run game, even though I know that Julio didn't play all the games last year, and I know he's always playing with injuries, and I get all that, but I feel like his presence on the field alone kind of helped Gurley out because with him, spread out wide, you always had to feel like they were going to throw the ball to him because if they get the ball in his hands, he has the ability to go. He always had the ability to go the distance, whether he was injured or not. He was just a freak of nature when it came to athleticism, whether he was injured or full health. I missed Julio full health, which is I wish him well where he's at now. But as far as the running game goes, I honestly think they're gonna hurt a little bit this year when it comes to that. I think their line is strong. I know that they definitely are going to get back some injured players that they had, from last year. And I don't see them breaking 500 this year.
Interesting. Very interesting here now that we have 17 games. So you cannot end the season 500. You're either going to be above or below, which is unique to say here. Second question about the Falcons. When does Matt Ryan retire?
That's a good question. I think that's the question a lot of people want the answer to. If I had to take a guess, I'd say he's got no more than 3 years. I'd say in 3 years he retires.
Okay.
I mean, his numbers, if you look them up, if you haven't done so, or if anyone has any interest in quarterbacking and whatnot, Matt Ryan's numbers are not bad by any means. He's always had the ability to put up the numbers. I know they nicknamed him Matty Ice. That was kind of debunked in the NFL. I know in the college, he did what he did to get that name, and I know in the NFL he really hasn't lived up to that name. I personally, as a Falcon fan, don't think that he was or is the answer at quarterback for the Falcons. Do I think he's a good player? Absolutely. I don't think it's what the Falcons need. Even in the Super Bowl, that they lost to the Patriots, you couldn't even really blame him for that loss. If you really look it up, you really couldn't put the blame on solely him. Everyone wanted to say, oh, he couldn't close out the game, but you have to remember that there's a lot that goes into football, and he really didn't play horrific to the point where you can just point the finger at him and put everything on him. I think he's got 3 years left. I don't really want to see him go longer to the point where he kind of not embarrasses himself. I mean, he's an NFL quarterback, but I don't want him to get to the point where he thinks he can do more than realistically what he can do. He's a great guy. I had the honor of really being able to get closer to him than I had thought ever when I was able to go down to Atlanta. But he's a good guy. He has a nice, really, really good, charismatic way of doing things off the field, and I wish him the best, but I only see about 3 years left in him.
And we look at the fact that outside of his first 3 seasons in the NFL, he's thrown for over 4,000 yards every other season from 2011 through this past season of 2020-21. So for a decade, 4,000 yards a season passing is a normalcy to him. Also the fact that his completion percentage has never dipped below 60% in a season except for in his second season where it was 58.3. He's 65.4% completion percentage for his entire career. He has more than double the amount of touchdowns than he does interceptions, 347 to 158. And so, notably, like Joe said, the numbers, and he plays 16 games a season, pretty much every single season except for his second season he played 14, and 2 seasons ago he played 15. Every other season he's played the entire regular season. So he has stayed healthy, and that's another huge thing about his career. So last question for you, Joe, about the Falcons. Favorite Falcon of all time?
My favorite favorite Falcon of all time
Yeah.
was Deion Sanders.
Okay. Why?
Yeah. I just liked what he brought to the game. I liked that he was flashy, and you want to talk about somebody, what we were talking about prior about saying that he was the best and really holding up to it. He was definitely that guy where when he came into the league, you knew it. I mean, in my opinion, he put the Falcons on the map to where, people started looking at them saying, maybe we should watch the team a little bit more and take them a little bit more seriously. And he really kickstarted, I believe, the organization to where they started building back up to making it back to a Super Bowl. I know it took a long time to get back to a Super Bowl, but I feel like after him, then you had Michael Vick coming along, and you had a bunch of other players that were flashy and really put them on the map, and they just they slowly maintained their mediocrity, and then they kind of stepped it up a notch to make it, to the Super Bowl. And then they're always in the conversation now. I always noticed as a Falcon fan that they never spoke about them until really, honestly, Deion Sanders and Michael Vick really put them on the map.
Yeah.
I know they made the Super Bowl in '98 and they played Elway and whatnot, but besides that, to stay relevant, I think they really did a good job. And then what they've done now with Matt Ryan and the offense that they put around them, they're talked about more often, and they're taken more seriously than what I remember. I think that is going to slip for the next couple of years. I think they're going to start turning into it's going to be a rebuild, and it's going to be a couple of games into the season that I feel like they're going to realize that this is going to be a straight rebuild type of a year. I didn't really appreciate the way that Julio Jones went about the way that he was leaving the Falcons, although I always respect him for his game, and I always liked his mentality. But, going on ESPN radio saying that he wants to leave because he wants to win, to me, I honestly didn't think that he really had that in him. I always kind of put him at the same level as like a Calvin Johnson type of a guy. But I couldn't see Calvin Johnson calling up, answering a phone from ESPN and saying, hey, I got to get out of there. I got to win. And then on top of that, debunking the fact that he's going to go to the Cowboys. I'm not a huge Cowboy fan to begin with, but even that was a little disrespectful to where they asked, like, "Oh, you're going to go to the Cowboys?" And he goes, "No, I want to win. I can't be going there." And he didn't give any type of hint of where he was going. He knew he wasn't going to he wasn't suiting up for the Falcons anymore. And from what he was saying, you knew he wasn't going to the Cowboys.
Yeah, and like you said, I mean, to handle things the way that some people handle them, you got to be smart. Again, public relations. Quick thing here. It's an extra question, but it's from a fan of the show. Quadri Allison, Russell Gage. You're a Falcons fan. What are your opinions of Allison and Gage?
Well, I'll tell you what. The Falcons will surprise you in certain ways, and I feel like you remember when they got Tony Gonzalez and it kind of came out of nowhere.
Yeah.
Where I feel like they signed him and they really didn't. It really wasn't promoted to the point where you kind of figured, okay, this is kind of where they wanted to go. Like when they got him, you were kind of like, where are they going with this? Why are they grabbing him? Where do they see? At that point, you didn't even think that they were trying to make any type of moves. I like Gage a lot. I think that, put it this way, all these guys are going to get more touches because Julio Jones isn't on the team anymore.
Yeah.
And even though he was injured, I think he played like 9 games last year. I can't see. They're going to move Ridley. They're going to ask Ridley to be number 1. And I don't know if he's going to be able to carry that load because he's never really seen those type of defenders. Every time Julio was on the field, they would always bring their number 1 corner on him, and you were able to open up Ridley as like a slot or even a number 2 or whatnot. So these guys are all going to be getting their touches. I mean, Gage, I don't know. I think last year he had I can't remember. He had something over like, I want to say he had over like 700 yards last year, and I know he definitely had a couple touchdowns. So I'm really looking forward to his play. I'm honestly looking forward to how they're going to play without. They're not going to have the best running game to start because they're not going to be able to kind of scare players. They're not going to be able to scare teams for that long ball that they used to really be able to throw. I know everyone kind of knocks Matt Ryan for the long ball, but they're not going to have that threat unless they prove it in the season. So unless they do something to really show that they can stretch the field, they're going to kind of be bottlenecked to a short game to where they're going to get more touches, where I think those players are going to get more touches, especially Gage, and they're going to have to try and run the ball between the tackles.
Yeah, and looking at this right now, and you said it, Russell Gage, and I mentioned this earlier on this year, 72 catches, 786 yards, 4 touchdowns last year behind Ridley.
How many yards did he have last year?
786.
Yeah, that's okay. Yeah, so listen, that's not a bad year.
No, and he was behind Ridley and behind Jones, and and you brought up the same. I mean, I have a concern too. Ridley's numbers, fantastic for 3 seasons, fantasy football wise, incredible. But he was a number 2 option, and he wasn't pulling the top guy. Julio Jones was, and now if Kelvin pulls the top guy, what's he going to look like? So I think people miscommunicate the fact that I'm not saying Calvin Ridley doesn't have good numbers, and I'm not saying that Calvin Ridley is not a good wide receiver. I'm saying being a number 2 and being the second option and having defenses cheat toward the other guy more than you opens things up. And now that you don't have that, unless Kyle Pitts takes that for Calvin Ridley could be in a place right now where his numbers are going to go down as he navigates getting comfortable, or he gets comfortable right off the bat. But he's never been the number 1 target, and so people look at his numbers and they say, wow, these numbers are great. He's a number 1 receiver. Yeah, by the numbers he's a number 1 receiver, but he wasn't the number 1 receiver in Atlanta, which could have helped to pad his numbers. And now that he is, the question is, can he keep those numbers?
I'm telling you right now, with the Falcons, if the Falcons are going to make any type of noise next year, they're going to have to set the tone very early. They don't play well down the season as the season goes on. They have to set it early because they're going to get figured out very quickly if they're going to turn into like a one-trick pony.
Yeah, absolutely.
And if they're going to be predictable to that level, they either need to figure out if they're going to just play football and kind of get by, or if they really want to compete, they have to change it up. They have to do what they did in previous seasons where they're throwing the ball, they're running the ball. They can't be as predictable as they were in the Super Bowl because everybody knew, this was years ago, but everybody kind of knew what they were doing, trying to run the clock out and not taking any type of chances. So once you become predictable, I mean, look at what's happening with Mahomes. I mean, teams are starting to figure him out. He's unstoppable because of his athleticism, and he is a freak of nature when it comes to his ability to play quarterback and throw the ball and run and throw. His run game for throwing the ball and running just to kind of create chaos. But they're starting to figure him out because of what they do in the playoffs and even in the Super Bowl. I mean, you saw what the Buccaneers did to them this year in the Super Bowl. They had him figured out very quickly.
Yeah, and that's the thing is, you have to understand that, players will eventually potentially get figured out, and that's where the athleticism and different pieces come in, and we'll have to see how Calvin Ridley responds to some of these pieces as we move forward. Joe, we kind of are spending rapid fire on our teams today due to time constraints, but you have 3 questions to ask me for Jacksonville. Go ahead when ready.
How excited are you? I wanted to ask you this question for the longest time when I heard about it. What are your thoughts on how excited are you for Tim Tebow?
I think it's great that the man is on the team. I wanted this to happen like 5 years ago, and again, this is something that I think people have so many opinions about Tim, and they hate Tim, and what about this with Tim, and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, listen, okay, I'm gonna paint a little picture for America. Here are the tight ends of Jacksonville. Chris Manhertz, James O'Shaughnessy, Luke Farrell, a rookie, Tyler Davis, and Ben Ellefson. Raise your hand, community, if you know any of these people. Thank you and good night. So, I mean, the reality of it all to me, and by the way, when people raise their hand and I can't see it, it makes me the happiest person in the world that someone in their car right now didn't raise their hand or raised their hand and I can't tell. But there's not, okay. He's on the roster in a place where they have no dominant guy. James O'Shaughnessy and I, we've done interviews one-on-one. I like James O'Shaughnessy. But they haven't trusted him to be the dominant guy. Chris Manhertz they brought in the offseason, and they drafted Luke Farrell and yada, yada, whatever. But the fact of the matter is, Tim Tebow, A, wins. B, Urban Meyer recruited him and knows what he's capable of. C, Jacksonville is his home. D, he's going to put butts in the seats, which is not everything, but I'm just telling people. E, he automatically gives you morals and values and virtue. F, in the locker room, this man, he loves God. He talks about that. He has the faith. He has the ability to motivate. There is no bad reason to have Tim Tebow on the team. No bad reason. And you don't have to pay him millions and millions of dollars because the man's got books and everything else and motivational speaking. He's fine. Tim Tebow on any team makes the team better. This is what I have for all the people that hate Tim Tebow. What is he doing that's going to affect the team in a negative way? Well, he's taking a roster spot. From who? From who? Nobody. Okay, that's number one. Number two, how do you hurt your team by having a positive person in the locker room when you had Telvin Smith, Jalen Ramsey, Marcel Darius, and Yannick Ngakoue, who I told everybody were problems, and none of them are on the team anymore? Tim Tebow makes the team better. He improves the team. Put him on the goal line and put him out there as a tight end, which means he's right on the line, which means he's right by Trevor Lawrence, which means that they can do all type of trick plays and everything. I love the idea. I think it's fantastic. If you hate Tim Tebow, I think it's because looking in the mirror, you don't like the fact that Tim may be prettier than you, nicer than you, more moral than you. Maybe you have a problem with your relationship with God. Maybe you haven't gone back to church in a while. I have no idea. But hating Tim Tebow is hating a person that the tabloids can't find anything on. TMZ can't find any reason to put him on the front page. So if your biggest problem with Tim Tebow is he doesn't deserve to be a tight end, well, then I guess we can look to the rest of the NFL, and I can say that about a bunch of other players, arguably too, that how is he better or worse than these guys? Is he Travis Kelce? No, but that argument's null and void because nobody is. Is he George Kittle? No, nobody is. Is he Mark Andrews? No, even though he dipped a little, nobody is. But outside of that, who are we talking about? Evan Ingram's dropped down a little bit. Can people name the tight ends that are on the Jets and on some of these teams out there? Can you name these guys? Hayden Hurst hasn't done well in Atlanta. Kyle Pitts is supposed to be good, but he's a rookie. The fact of the matter is, this man is on a team. If you have a problem with it, check yourself more than you need to check him. And if you can name another Jacksonville tight end before I just told you all of them, I'm going to call BS on that. So I'm proud of the decision. I'm happy with it. And if people have an issue with Tim Tebow, I think people have an issue with themselves. And that's just the reality of it.
Well, I'm just excited to see what he does because I don't want to be a hater in this situation because he always surprises me. I mean, yeah. I understand where people got off with him being the quarterback and he didn't have the fundamentals and his arm strength wasn't there and whatnot, and their debunk for that playoff win was that he threw a pass and they got lucky. So I could see all that, but I don't want to hate because then the man went to go play for the Mets and the farm league and whatnot. I mean, I know he made his way across the NFL on certain teams. I know he made his way to the Jets, and I feel like they really ruined him with putting him onto the punt team and whatnot. But that's a whole other story. But I just feel like he always surprises. And the fact that he doesn't complain is what I really like about him because he's not someone that's going to say, hey, listen, why am I doing this? Why am I not doing this? If you need him somewhere, he'll do it. I mean, look, he's gonna try and be a tight end in Jacksonville. Yeah. It might be the best thing that he's ever done.
Yeah, and the best seems to always be ahead of him. So we'll see what he does next. What's your second one for me?
If you had to guess what the record would be for the Jaguars this year with the new 17 games this year, what would you say that they'd be?
I'm gonna say 8-9.
8 and 9.
Yep, 8-9. I think they'll be right by the equator. Hopefully 9 and 8, but Tennessee's gonna be good. The Colts depend on Carson Wentz. The Texans are a mess. Jacksonville should be the second best team, but I'm gonna say 8 and 9 comfortably.
And what do you think? My third question is going to be: what do you think the defense needs to do to really get them to that position of being 8 and 9? Because that's not a bad season for the Jags if they could do that.
Yeah, I mean, I think the defense, what Jacksonville's needed for a long time is depth, and they have it on the offensive line finally, arguably, hopefully. But they brought in Roy Robertson-Harris to help out, and Jihad Ward, they brought him in as well. They drafted Jay Tufel, and then they brought in, they have Malcolm Brown, and Joe Schobert has come in recently here for the team over the last couple of years. Miles Jack is back. Kayvon Chasen, Josh Allen. The thing about Kayvon Chasen is that he's a linebacker, but he can play both DN and linebacker. Josh Allen can do the same. So having these multiple guys and then being able to move them to linebacker situations, move Miles Jack back to the outside, which is what I wanted. I didn't want you can have him be strong side, weak side, or he could be inside. Right now they have him on the depth chart as inside, but he's multiple. I like him on the outside. I think having guys that can be defensive ends could move Kayvon or Josh to the outside. I love Shaquille Griffin coming in. C.J. Henderson bringing him in is good too. Tyson Campbell brings depth. Andre Sisco from Syracuse is there. Trey Herndon is still on the team, who filled in well when Jalen Ramsey was traded. So I think they have the depth. Now it's just about answering the call. I'm a little bit concerned about the obviously defensively, looking at a 3-4 type of situation and having Joe Schobert, Miles Jack, Kayvon Chasen, and Josh Allen all as linebackers, and then having Roy Robertson-Harris, Malcolm Brown, and Taven Bryan as your defensive line. I'm not sold on Taven Bryan. I thought it was not the greatest pick in the first round for them a couple of years ago out of Florida. So, I think the defensive line is a question to me. The linebackers could really arguably be one of the most special pieces in the NFL. And then, I think they automatically get better at corner and potentially on the secondary in and of itself. So I think there's depth there, and I think they need to come through. But my biggest question right now is the D-line.
I was gonna say D-line as well, because I remember watching a game or two of them. They definitely need depth there, which I think 8 and 9 is fair. I think, like you said, if they can keep it together, I think it's going to be an exciting year for them. They're definitely, obviously, I feel like the Jags are always at some point in a rebuild, whether it's a portion of their organization or the entire organization. But I feel like they're starting to really find their trench to dig and maintain, because I feel like they're no longer branching out to all avenues. I feel like they have a purpose, they have a direction they want to go in, and I feel like they're going to stick with that.
Yeah, and my hope is that this is a move in the right direction. Is they've tried a lot of times. They have a franchise quarterback since Mark Brunell, and it hasn't worked out. With that being said, Joe Forgione, speaking about a lot of things, about a lot about baseball, a home run derby, the Mets, the Yankees, as well as the Falcons and the Jaguars, and of course, more than anything, life. Joe, I want to thank you for all the inspirational stuff that came from the heart today. It really means a lot.
No problem, man. Thank you.
All right, I'll talk with you soon. Take care.
All right, bye.
That coming from Joe Forgione this morning on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora, where sports meets that thing called life. We'll take our final step aside of today's show and be back to wrap it up right after this on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora inside of the Cafe Kubal studios. Avicoli's, located on the corner of Route 57 and Wetzel Road in Liverpool, New York, is our home for our Liverpool Warriors Athletics monthly show. Come and see us every single month and find out when we're going to be there by finding us on Facebook at Wake Up Call DT, Twitter at Call DT, and Instagram at Wake Up Call _DT. Avicoli's open for you 6 days a week from Tuesday through Sunday for lunch, dinner, and drinks. You can go to their pizza, more casual side, as well as their fine dining, their bar that's connected to the fine dining, and of course their outdoor seating. So you have many different ways to enjoy Avicoli's today, which has been in our community for decades and right down the road within walking distance from Liverpool High School that they support so very much and support all the kids and families in our community. You can also get them for takeout, delivery, and catering by calling 315-622-5100. That's 315-622-5100. Canine Camp Dog Daycare and Canine Campground Dog Boarding is a place that I've trusted with Lily, the only place I've trusted with Lily, and they're located in East Syracuse right off of Bridge Street. On 228 Old Bridge Street, you'll find the dog daycare, and you'll find the campground across the way right there around the corner on 242 Johnson Street in East Syracuse. The perfect place to bring your furry loving friend for short and long-term care, to know that they'll be loved, treated well, and that every dog comes in after going through a series of information to make sure that those dogs have good temperaments, are good to play with others, and are going to be kind to the dogs. So not only do they want to take care of your dog individually, but they want to make sure that when your dog's around other dogs, they are in a safe and positive environment. PB&J's Lunchbox, located on 663 Old Liverpool Road in Liverpool, New York, now has a home for you in their street side cafe that you can come out to. You have followed their truck through Central and Upstate New York, and that truck is busier than ever in Central and Upstate New York. But now, following that truck and hoping the truck will come to your town, come to your neighborhood, now when you're craving that grilled peanut butter and jelly sandwich and everything else they offer, including their Philly cheesesteak on a pita and so much more, PB&J's Lunchbox now has their brick-and-mortar location right on the main road on 663 Old Liverpool Road in Liverpool, New York, right down the road from the Thruway, the Highway, Destiny USA, and Onondaga Lake Parkway. Head out to PB&J's Lunchbox today and give some love back to a local business that is extremely creative with the food that they make. Victory Sports Medicine and Orthopedics, located on 791 West Genesee Street in Skaneateles, is right by the water and the perfect place for you to go on your journey to your own personal victory. They listen to their patients, they care about their patients, and be it preventative care, rehab, as well as physical therapy or surgery, Victory Sports Medicine and Orthopedics, led by Dr. Mark Petropoli, is the perfect place to go for any injury head to toe. And I appreciate them so very much and have spent almost a decade trusting them with myself, my body, my health, and my wellness. So thank you to Victory for helping to lead me to victory on 791 West Genesee Street in Skaneateles. You can call them at 315-685-7544 to make an appointment today. That's 315-685-7544. With that being stated here on Wake Up Call, and thank you to all of our kind words that we got today, and thank you to Greg for saying good stuff, gentlemen. We appreciate you as always, Greg, and thank you for being such an avid fan of the show, supporter of the show, and a responder to the show, and telling us what you think. We appreciate that so very much, so thank you for that. Inside of the Cafe Kubal studios, I want to thank my guests today, Dave Pasiak and Joe Forgione, inside of MaandPawsPopcorn.com's What's Poppin'. Use the promo code DT20 and you'll get 20% off at MaandPawsPopcorn.com. And of course, make sure you're watching and listening to Wake Up Call every Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. Eastern Time. We've given you 3 hours twice this week, which is a beautiful thing to underpromise and overdeliver. YouTube.com/WakeUpCallDT, Facebook.com/WakeUpCallDT, Facebook.com/LiveNowDT, MixLR.com/WakeUpCallDT, and on WakeUpCallDT.com. 5 live places, 5 days a week, Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. Eastern Time. And, of course, check back daily and weekly to our archives to find our new shows coming up. And I promise there is plenty more to come. I've given you my word, and I will bring you those shows. Stitcher, Spotify, MixLR, YouTube, TuneIn, iTunes, and Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, and Podbean. Search Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora, or simply one word, Wake Up Call DT. In the meantime, God bless, no stress, do your best. We'll talk with you soon here on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora, and I hope that your prayers are answered, good things come your way, and that your day is only getting better from here. We'll talk to you soon.